Happy International Chess Day, everybody. I could not think of a better way to spend the day than with all of you covering the FIDE Chess.com Women's Speed Chess Championship Superfinal with the one, the only Grandmaster Anna Muzichuk. So, Anna, thank you so much for joining today. How excited are you for the match?
Hi, Robert. Hi to all our viewers. Happy International Day to everyone, to all the chess lovers. And thank you, Robert, for such a great introduction. I'm feeling great. I'm looking forward to the game. So, welcome to the super final of Women's Speed Chess Championship. We all have been waiting so long for it.
We are stoked indeed. And there are two names that you have to know for today. That is Alexandra Kosteniuk and Anna Ushenina. So these two players are competing for quite a bit of prize money, and in addition to the grand just title of being the Women's Speed Chess Champion. So let us talk about the super final format. It is different than the previous Grand Prix legs. There are just two players today. And as you can see, the time control is not longer, but the matches are longer. So we still have the 5 minute plus 1 second, the 3 minute plus 1 second, and the 1 minute plus 1 second time segments. However, it's 90 minutes of the longest, 60 minutes of the middle time control, and then 30 minutes of bullets. So there's just many more chess games to be played today. The person with more points by the end will be the women's speed chess champion. As we bring up the head-to-head stats here, Anna, I'm going to ask you the difficult question. Who is the favorite between these two players who, at least on paper, by their chess.com ratings, seem quite evenly matched?
Who is the favorite? It's a very difficult question. I think it's not correct if I say something today because you know that Anna Ushenina, she's my teammate in Ukrainian national team. So for today, I will not predict anything. I am just looking forward for the incredible games to start. And it's really good that we will have more time and more games to cover.
Well, you say that now. By the end of the show, I'm not sure you'll be so thrilled about having spent 3 hours commentating alongside me here. But on a very serious note, I am really looking forward to this. As I look at these two players here, they may look happy in those photos, but they're going to be tired by the end of what is going to be an extremely intense match. And if you won't make a prediction, I will. And I just don't know who to pick. But I feel like the momentum currently favors Alexandra. She said yesterday she would prefer the rest and the preparation. We'll see what kind of preparation Anna has been doing in the last week, as she did not play the fourth Grand Prix leg. But I do believe after what was a huge rally by Kosteniuk in the final Grand Prix leg, just to be here, I don't know. I feel like she has just everything going for her right now. She's has more practice lately. I'm going to give the nod to Alexandra over Anna.
Alexandra has definitely showed a great performance, and she got the highest number of points. So basically, before going to the super final, she was the winner of all the legs. Before the overall score, she got some incredible amounts of points, 86.5, yes, and the second and the third players, and of course all the rest, they had much less points. So Alexandra really is a well-deserved winner of that. But today is the super final and we have a new match, so all these points are not counted anymore. And we see the players, they are preparing for the matches. They are both very serious, not as on the picture smiling we saw them before. Now it will be a really tough match, a tough battle, which will start soon, pretty soon, I believe.
Yeah, and actually, I sort of like what you were saying there about how it's a clean slate. Even though they played 3 of the 4 Grand Prix legs, that doesn't matter anymore. It's just the two players they'll be facing off over the course of 3 hours of chess games. That's a lot. So how you start the match will be very important. Anna has shown, well, you as well, but Anna Ushenina has shown great preparation throughout the Women's Speed Chess Championship. I know that I've been impressed by it. Her Kara Khan has been very solid. She's been playing London type of setups from the white side that have allowed her to have stable but easy positions, slight advantages that she's been able to work into full points. And for Alexandra Kosteniuk, well, she's won so many games in a variety of openings. And she did express yesterday that it's possible for her to go a little bit on tilt. Her game against Humpy Conero, the final one of the 3 minute plus 1 second time control, was one where she castled queenside in a position where her classical chess skills, her training would say, no, 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 never do that. She just was in that mindset of I need to play for a win. So on one hand, we have the very stable in terms of chess style Anna Ushenina, and then on the other hand, we have Alexander Kosteniuk who can mix it up at any moment, depending on what the scenario calls for. So I think it's going to be a clash of styles in a way.
Yes, right. I think these players, they have different styles. And what I also like to mention, I think Anna Ushenina, not me, she did great in the 1+1 games. So perhaps she will even try to somehow focus on these games. I don't know what's the strategy of the girls, but I see that the game is already started.
And I mentioned the Karakan. She decides to play the Petrov, perhaps inspired by Humpi Kuneru yesterday against Alexandra Kosteniuk. And here we see this line where the bishop is on f5, the bishop's on d3, staring through a knight on e4. So white is going to apply pressure on the center, as we see. This is throwing me back, even though I was pretty young at the time, as were you. I'm getting some Kramnik Anand vibes. Right? This is a long time ago for us as chess players, but if we're going to get some Petrov defenses here, maybe we have to call back for a world championship match.
I really liked how much you liked the Petrov yesterday because you were expecting some boring chess, but I told you, even if it's Petrov, girls will find a way to make the games interesting and complicated. And here, as I see, speaking about the line, this bishop f5 in the beginning, bishop f5 on the fifth move, it's not the most popular move in the position, but I think now everything was transposed to the more popular line because d5 was played. So what do you think about this position?
Yeah, I think that white has to be slightly better thanks to being the first player to double rooks on the only open file here on the e file. Not to mention that Alexandra's clock, she's almost a minute ahead and plenty of time for Anna because it is the longest time. She still has 4 minutes. And look at that decision to take on d6. Anna, what can you tell everybody about choosing to give up a bishop for a knight in a position like this?
I think there is no some general type like if you have to give this bishop or you have to keep this bishop because in this particular position I think Alexandra she didn't like that this knight from d6 could move to e4 blocking the e file because look how pretty these rooks are looking at e2 and e1 they are pinning the black's rook on e8 and now knight e5, this active possibility. That's what Alexandra likes, active moves, dynamic chess. So maybe bishop d6, strategically speaking, it's not so good, but from tactical point of view, it may work.
Yeah, because black is a bit tied down, at least for the time being. The knight on e5 is an excellent piece. As you pointed out, the two rooks are very happy on e1 and e2. And after I see bishop f6 and now queen g3, I'm just looking for some kind of tactical shot with next move knight to g4 or something of that nature because there's so many pieces under attack if this knight moves out the way. And that means that Anna here is spending some time. She's down a minute on the clock. She should be very careful. And she, in fact, takes the knight so it can't jump away.
Yes, and now it's the question if Alexandra will take with the rook or with the pawn. I believe she will take with the rook because if you take with the pawn, then you are blocking these rooks. Yes, she did take with the rook, so that's logical. And now it's Anna's turn. Will she trade the rook? She did trade one of them.
And how do you take back now? Do you take with the rook to leave? Oh, she takes with the pawn. So she closes the e file, does Alexandra, and now queen g6 and queen trade being offered. And I think because white is a little bit ahead in terms of time, you can take on g6 and then put your knight on d4. And that way you're at least making a little bit of progress here. Although after h takes g6, I don't really see how white really makes progress. You may have slightly more space. Your knight is into the center while black's knight's sitting on f8. But I think taking with the h-pawn, as she just did, makes sense. And you don't have f4, f5 for white. That's very important. The double pawn is actually useful for black, taking away control of the f5 square.
I'm guessing this position looks pretty much even because many pieces have been traded. So, but girls will not agree to a draw soon. So the game will continue at least for a couple of moves. Let's see how it will develop. G3 was played, protecting the f4 pawn. Now b6. Very logical. Now I think white will try to bring the king closer to the center. Or h4 first is also a very useful move, just not to allow g5 at any moment. And now the king is coming.
Yeah, this is a really interesting endgame because while some people would say, well, let's do a count: 7 pawns, knight, rook, and king per side. That's great. You should always count the material. But the players are playing on different flanks. Look at c5. Black has 4 pawns from the a through the d file. So we cut the board in half along the d file here. And if you cut the board on the e file, white has 4 pawns from the e through the h file. So both sides, if they're trying to play for a passed pawn, it's white on the king side, black on the queen side. And I'm looking at g4, f5 for white. Can I actually push those pawns, or will that make my pawn structure weaker? So, Anna, what do you think we're going to see here? We're going to see black try to move like d4, not the rooks on d8. Is white going to play g4? What are you anticipating?
I feel that by playing rook d8, Anna is really trying to push d4, and you were asking whether g4 will be played or not, and here you have the answer: g4 was played.
So no more surprises. We we clearly see what white is aiming for here, but g4 is a move like any pawn move that you cannot take back. So the biggest concern I have when I see this move is if eventually rook h8 will be a problem, as now my pawn on h4 is no longer defended by its best friend, another pawn. And actually we saw rook h8 right away. And now I'm also looking at c4, knight into c5, perhaps giving away maybe that past d pawn as a possibility, but giving my knight forward progress here and access to important squares like e4 or d3, I'm starting to like black's position on it.
I think this c4 was an interesting alternative, but rook d8 was played, and now Alexandra can take her time to actually activate her pieces. f5 was played, and I somehow believe that rook h8, rook d8 back, black lost some time. They could try to play more actively, but maybe Anna prefers some calm strategy, just not to go, too much forward to keep the position balanced. Let's see how she will try to play now, but the knight on c7 looks a bit passive.
Yeah, I think this is actually a good illustration of when playing solidly to avoid risk is actually the riskiest decision because black has lost important time and important space. And as you can see now, these white pawns in f5 and e5, maybe white will even play h5 at some point. And this is really deep down the line, Anna. But something that I think about is like, can I play h5 and later f6 and try to break free a past h pawn? And it's a long story. That's for an endgame without rooks, maybe a king and pawn endgame. But I'm just thinking along those lines there with an eventual h5 and just trying to make progress on the king side.
It looks like each side is trying to make her plan working because white is playing on the king side and black is trying to attack on the queen side. So h5 was played, and yes, this idea was f6 and later on, sacrifice the pawn and then moving h pawn is a good idea. But if there were no rooks and no knights on the board, it would be even more dangerous. What we can do now is to play a rook h1 and then followed by h6, trading these pawns but activating the rook. Or rook b1 is also very interesting move, just taking this line and coming to b7. I don't really like black's position. It's too passive.
I was
f6
about to say something and then I didn't get it off in time, and I'm glad I actually held it back because what I was about to say was Alexandra yesterday struggled with moving too quickly when she was ahead on the clock. Here she's up a minute. She spent 30 seconds on playing f6 check. I think she could have afforded to spend even more time than that because it was such a committal decision. White now is down a pawn, still has a better position because the end games are often about the quality of your pawns, not the quantity of them. And this h6 pawn is the best pawn on the board, but black is up a pawn. So if you're able to corral that thing, then black will not be in any danger. And here, actually, rook g6 is a possible move. I don't know if it's good, but I'm looking at tactics now. I protect the pawn, and if the pawn took on g6, there would be knight takes g6 check with a fork. But instead, we see rook h1. And how do you make progress here? I like white's position, but she's just going to take the a5 pawn. She's going to have two different passed rook pawns on it.
Yes, and especially when someone is playing with the knight, it's very difficult, to control both pawns. The A and H pawn are like the worst for the knight. So that definitely makes sense. Maybe f6 was a little bit premature, but that was a very uh, interesting decision. And I think Alexandra doesn't regret it now because she got a lot of activity.
She certainly has. And d4 was played by Anna. And this is actually what I would say is a decent decision. And what black is really trying to do is somehow get rid of both white rook pawns. And then even if you sacrifice the knight for it, because any endgame, rook and knight versus rook is a theoretically drawn position, or it should be. However, I don't know how you expect to take this pawn on h6 and then also sacrifice your knight for the a pawn. The pawns are so spread out, and knights are pretty slow pieces. So I think that Alexandra in game one here, she's in excellent shape to try and take this one. Although the h6 pawn, now that I've said that, is able to be captured next move.
I think Anna will win the h6 pawn, but it's the question because she will put her knight in, immediately if she takes on h6 or after trading the rooks, the knight will be a little bit too far. That's why she prefers to keep her king closer to the a pawn and then take on h6. That makes sense because she is now kind of controlling both of the pawns.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And we can show after the game, but when the king was on e7 a move ago, if rook takes h6 and we traded rooks here, white's king would have gone into c6 and b7 and helped that pawn out. Now rook h5 was played. I think it's a very smart move. Knight takes h6, walking into a pin. Oh my gosh, you will have rook h8 and knight f7 to get out of this pin. It just looks like a very scary thing to do.
So will rook h8 be played now? Yes, it was played. And now it's like very close to a draw. Knight f7, just on pin.
And you can't go rook f5 because knight d6 check. In fact, you have to trade rooks. And now that we're here, knight f7, knight d6, bring the knight to help stop that passed pawn. And that should just result in a draw here.
It definitely looks like a draw. I don't think something will happen in this game. Knight c4, king b5, knight d6. Perhaps this will be the... Okay, king c6, king a6. Can you take it? Can you take it?
I wonder if she's doing this because I was wondering if she was spending some time because she wants to get to the quicker time controls. And we are just the start. As you see, we have an hour and 18 minutes of 5 minute plus 1 second increment chess remaining before they move on to the 3+1. But I'm wondering if Anna is just saying, hey, I feel even better, I have better chances in the quicker time control. So let me spend an extra 10 seconds here. Or maybe she's just trying to rest before the next game. I don't know what her plan is here, her great strategy.
Yes, it's actually very interesting to know what the strategy of each player because it's sometimes even the most interesting thing, like what how they prepared for the matches, what was their strategy. We have the next game shown on the board.
Yep.
It was
just a Nimzo.
It's a Nimzo, yes, but not a usual Nimzo. I don't think this line with d6 and b6 is seen so often, though it looks...
This is what I was going to assume was the problem with this line, though, because knight a4, now I'm playing a3, and your bishop is almost trapped. So a3, bishop a5, rook to b1. Oh, there's bishop e4. Okay, that's something very important not to overlook, because I was like, can I just play rook to b1 and pawn to b4? And then I'm like, all right, Robert, you blundered. Get that first huge blunder out the way. All right, it's gone. Anna, you talk about the position because you won't blunder like I did.
No. I think the viewers like your explanations. Rook d1 was played. Rook b1, bishop e4 was a nice trap. Bishop e4 can still be played, and white has to go queen b3. It's not usual that you have to play queen b3 as the only move, but there is still a place for the queen, so it's good. What to do for black? Maybe to play something like queen e7. Bishop e4 was played first, queen b3, now queen e7. I believe it's the best place for the queen in this position for black.
I like queen e7. A weird move that I'm also looking at is rook to b8 because I kind of want to play b5. I'm worried about my bishop getting trapped. She put her queen on c7 instead. It's very difficult to trap this bishop because you'd have to play somehow queen to a2 and then protect the b4 square and then play b4. So knight c3, I would take that immediately. I don't like the look of my bishop on a5. I think I need to take this knight on c3, otherwise it gets to b5.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to place the queen on c7, because if this knight comes to b5, then it will be attacked on this square. So I really prefer the queen on e7. But okay, Alexandra put it on c7. Now she has to take. She has to take. Okay, she did it.
Yeah, she did it. And the question becomes, is for the second game in a row, is having the bishops, in this case the bishop pair for white, is that an advantage over the knights? They're all 8 pawns on the board for each side. That means that the bishops don't have the clearest diagonals. The bishop on g2 would like to have this long light square diagonal, but the bishop on e4 saying not so fast. I'm going to compete for it. And now after b3, it's clear that bishop b2 wants to be played and trying to line the bishop and queen up in a battery to attack the king side. However, it's not like black is going to be so accommodating. You can take on d4 in some lines, bring your knight out to c5. Black is extremely solid here, Anna. And actually, in my experience, I've struggled on the white side of these positions and felt more comfortable from black for some reason.
Maybe it's easier to play for black, but white's play is also quite easy. It's quite a calm position, but I don't like this queen on c3 because there are some ideas of taking on d4 and then d5, and then the queen is under a pin. So I think white has to put it on some other place. I was thinking about queen e1 on the previous move, or queen e3, but knight e1 was played, and Alexander is trying to underline that the queen on c3 is not well played. She played b5.
Interesting.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there. I was just looking at the position and think b5 is what you were highlighting with the rook and the queen, but instead she might just take back on b5 and say, hey, my center, at least pawns closer to the center, are better, and this pawn on b3 is a potential weakness where you'd like to play right now a3 back to a2 to protect this pawn.
Yeah, because the pawn on b3 is a bit vulnerable and the pawn on e2 is hanging. So it's not so easy to find a good move for white here. There are plenty of possibilities, but what to play? Maybe queen d3 looks like a good option, trying to trade the queens and to get into the endgame.
Yeah, I would actually, she plays queen d3, so you and Anna, surprise, surprise, Anna and Anna thinking similarly here. And I'm trying to envision, do I want a queen trade from black's point of view, or do I just want to drop my queen back to square like b6? She plays rook to b8, hoping for the queen trade on b5, and that way she can double up her rooks on the b file and go after this pawn on b3. So that's Alexander's idea, and now we see a capture on c5. So do take with the knight, which allows the pawn to go up to b4. She does so because if you took with the pawn, the open d file would have been very nice for white.
Perhaps before now, and just forget about this little weakness on b3, and then if the knight, oh, okay, bishop f6 first, d takes f6, and then before, I believe.
I like this move order a little bit less, and it may not be important in this position, but because you capture on f6 first, you've eliminated some options from yourself. Whereas after b4, black was going to play knight a4. Here, it feels like the knight doesn't have to go a4 if you don't want to play it. So I think that you gave Alexandra a couple more moves, even though she does play knight a4 anyway. So it didn't matter. But I just want you to think about that, everybody, when you should capture on the square like f6, when you can do it the next move.
Yes, white could wait with taking on f6. They could first play b4, and after knight a4, there was additional possibility to go bishop d4. But she preferred this way. I think both of the players, they are playing like really very solid. They are trying not to go too much forward. It's like in the first two games, both of them are okay with the draws. Somehow I believe this game will be also ended in a draw. But maybe we shouldn't run too fast. Personally, me in this endgame, I would prefer a black, because after d5, look, we are threatening already knight b2 and perhaps knight c4. Just be careful, because if let's say knight b2, rook d2, you can't play knight c4. There is a nice trap as rook takes c4. So maybe this is what Anna is hoping about at the moment. But still, knight c5 is nice because the pawn on a3, It's the question. It may be a strong pawn if it advances to, let's say, a6, but when it's too far, the rooks can attack it, and it's not so easy to defend it.
Yeah, I would agree with you that it's more of a vulnerability than an asset at the moment. It's just one that can be captured in the near future. However, look at what Anna is doing here. She's flipping her rook to b1, taking in an open file. So if she can play rook to c7 and maybe get this other rook to b7, I would be concerned about this f7 pawn. Not to mention knight h5 at any moment will put pressure on f6. So I think that white has actually some attacking chances, whereas black has a probably a better pawn structure, if you will, because there's no isolated a pawn that's directly under attack. So I do believe that Alexandra needs to figure out not just this move, but what her planning is going to be exactly. And she plays king g7, and I'm still now wanting to play rook to b7 and go after f7. I'm asking for a lot, though.
Rook c7 was played, and I think if black goes for rook d7 now, white will not trade the rooks. They will play rook c8, trying to bring another rook to b8 and then have some mating ideas. I think black would also prefer to have the pawn on g6 rather than on f6, because in this case, the structure will look much nicer.
That's right. And it takes away this knight h5 check type of idea. So if rook to d7, maybe rook c8, as you're saying, it just is potentially uncomfortable. And as we see the time situation, it is Anna who is up 40 seconds right now over Alexandra. And king f8 played. That is, to me, shows that she was uncomfortable with some kind of knight takes e6 if this knight moved away from c5. So now the knight can try to move away, but there's rook b1 to b7. And you do not want to see two rooks in the 7th rank.
The problem was that with the king on g7, there was a threat of rook c1, and then if the knight moves somewhere, knight e6, because the king on g7 was under the pin. That's why she preferred to place the king on f8, but now it's more difficult to play for black. Knight d7.
Ooh, rook b7 for sure.
Rook b7.
This
for
is why
sure. Okay.
this is why I tend not to call games as in result terms, because even at the beginning of this, I would say that the draw was the most likely result, especially in speed chess and with a different dynamic for both players. I'm like, wait, there's still opportunities here. And how do I pile up pressure on this knight on d7? That's what I really want to do. So knight d3 to c5, if I could do that in one move, I would be winning. But I know after knight to d3, you'll play king to d6, and that way the knight is no longer pinned. And this is what's going to happen. Only move king d6.
I guess king d6 will be played because there are not so many options. What about king e8?
Then knight to b4
Ah, then
and king
knight
to c6.
before. Knight before it was very unpleasant. Knight before, knight c6. Right.
And now with knight to b4, which is just played, I guess there's rook c5. So she does play this. And after rook takes c5, oh my gosh, this is looking kind of suspicious for black's position here. But we have 20 seconds per side.
a4 played. Yes, this pawn is becoming dangerous.
It changed. It said, Robert talked badly about me. Now I'm going to be a nice pass pawn in the endgame. f4, and then go after the f7 pawn. That's what I would do.
f4, knight d3, and then take it.
Yes. And you're going to lose the a4 pawn, but you're going to get the f7 and either the h7 or the f6 pawn. So it's 2 pawns for the first time. I love this move, e5. Saying, I'm going to be down material regardless. Let me get active. And white has 8 seconds left.
I think it was a very nice move. Now, if knight c4, black would have taken with the d pawn.
Oh my gosh.
Knight c6, king e3. It's such a strong initiative from black's side. King e2, some knight e3.
Oh, is this king's not getting checkmated? And then whose pass pawns are quicker? Rook f1 is f. So I want to move my knight and go e3, but that does take up some precious time.
Who will be quicker? Only 5 seconds for Ushenina. Oh.
And knight d5 or knight f5, but you can't take because f takes.
This fork.
But f takes and you get a queen, so she couldn't take this rook. And there's 2 pawns here for black. So f7, I would sacrifice the knight and try to push my 2 pawns. That h7 pawn, I don't think was important. That's not a really
crazy game. Yeah, black queens first, so black is winning. Queen e5 comes with the check and mate. Rook f6 was the mate.
Oh my gosh, what a game there! That turned so quickly.
It looked like white was pressing and white had a very pleasant position, but in the end, when it came to a huge time trouble and both pawns started running, it was really not easy to understand who will be quick, and somehow black was quicker. And I really liked how Alexandra played e5, e4, and how she gained the initiative, but Anna was doing very well before that.
She was, and I'm going to make a mental note in chat. Remind me if I forget of game two from this match, because that could be a potential turning point. I'm not saying that Alexandra is going to run away with this or anything, but that was such an important game to set the tone early on here. And it did feel like Anna was outplaying Alexandra for many of those moves, but Alexandra was so resourceful. She got activity. And speaking of activity, I'm looking at this board right now in game three here. White's pawns on f4 and e5. I know this is opening theory, and black plays like this to try to control the light squares. I'm just always worried that f5 is going to happen whether black likes it or not.
You mean f5 now, even sacrificing the exchange after that? There are some ideas like this, but I know that Alexandra played this line before with white pieces, so I guess she's still in the theory. She will move her queen away, and then she will try to play knight g3, trying to kick off the bishop, and then to play f5, because it's the main idea of the line to push f5 at some moment. Queen c3, e6 is in the air, so be careful because the rook on h8 is unprotected. Though if black plays something like bishop g7 or something of this kind, it's
Maybe,
still okay.
what do you think about a queen trade like queen b6 and queen to b4? I guess that's a possibility, but you are allowing white to develop very easily with bishop to e3. Well, she does play queen to b6, but I was thinking bishop e3, and after queen b4, maybe I just trade queens and put my knight on d4. So even without the queens, white can still try to play for this f5, but it doesn't feel so dangerous.
Yes, without the queens, it's not as dangerous as with the queens, because the king on e8 in the end game, it feels quite safe. So I think that the move queen b6 followed by queen b4 is really makes a lot of sense. I didn't see that, but now I'm looking at it, and the more I look at it, the more I like it.
The two bishops, right? The bishop pair in the end game is something that you should be happy about. And this pawn on c2 is one that needs some defense because the bishop on f5 is already staring at it. And if you push the pawn to c3, only black has a light square bishop. So by pushing your pawn from a light square to a dark square, you're making your remaining light squares a little bit more vulnerable. And so we have seen the knight jump to g3. I think that black will probably play bishop d3 and maybe bishop a6 and keep this bishop on a pretty long diagonal, not the longest, but still a decent one. As if you move back to d7, I feel like then f5 happens, you're losing control of the board a little bit, but perhaps that also is acceptable for black.
But do we have to move this bishop at all? Maybe we can just leave it, and if the knight comes, if there is a trade, knight f5, g takes f5, it's not so easy to attack the f5 pawn. That's why, if white had the light squared bishop, you shouldn't do it. But without the light squared bishop, it's not as dangerous. The king on e6 is placed perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Black got the g5 for the rooks. Also, they can try to attack on the queen side. h5 played first just in case there is no g4 anymore.
Yeah, you're actually talking about what has happened, and that was a really smart play. So good idea by you, Anna, to realize that, hey, just because you're doubling your pawns doesn't mean that it's that bad of a thing. Because if we cut the board in half, like I've instructed people to do in the past, you see that white has 4 pawns from the E through the H files, black has 4 from the A through the D. So black is up a pawn on the queen side, white is up a pawn on the king side, and white's pawns are stuck. There's a king on E6 saying, nope, you're not pushing that pawn on E5, and black can play C5 and try to push the pawns at some moment, and with more pawn mobility tends to be an easier time playing this game.
Before Anna played rook 8 to g8, I was thinking about some play on the queen side. I was thinking about some a5 or b5, a5, a4, but Anna preferred rook 8, g8. Now there was a question if the pawn on a7 was hanging, but I believe it's not that dangerous because after bishop a7, at least black could go rook a8 and then capture the pawn on a2. Rook g4, g3, h4.
Even though h4 feels like that's what Anna's going for. I don't know what that really gets you because as the king went to f1, you play h4, I go king to e2. You're going to try to use the open h file, perhaps, and then what? Because like you're not really going to create an attack. I'm going to be able to fend you off. And c4 was chosen by Alexandra. She's playing on the side where she's down a pawn, but now she's opening up the d file for her rook on d3. The c4 rook is more active, can swing over to a square like a4 potentially. What do you make of what's just transpired, Anna, where black has been pushing on the king side where she's down a pawn, and white's just pushing on the queen side where she's down?
I really liked c4 because white opened its rooks, and somehow the rook on g4 is now doing nothing, so black needs some time to get this rook back into the game. But trading the rooks was a good decision because rook b3 was a threat, and I didn't like so much activity from white's side. Maybe now just rook g8, just go back with this rook, just try to activate it.
Well, now your a7 pawn is actually hanging, so maybe a6 is necessary just first, just to avoid dropping this pawn. But it's easy to forget about that pawn, right? It's been over there for such a long period of time.
Yeah, sometimes you may easily forget it and then you just lose it. Sometimes that's what I'm doing.
I've been there. I wasn't bringing it up to say like, oh, Anna, how could you? No, I know from experience. The a7 pawn's been hanging for about what, 8 moves or something. So you just say, oh, you couldn't take it then. You still can't take it. You still take it. Oh, wait, you actually could take it there, and that would be a problem. So a6 was chosen by Anna here, and now black's pawns can't really push forward on the queen side. The rook is doing a really good job for white, and rook h1 is coming perhaps, and then maybe rook h6 check or rook h7. It feels like white is a bit more coordinated at this point.
Looks like that, but not so easy to make progress because if you play rook h1, rook h6, there is always rook g6. Okay, I can go rook h8, rook b8. Maybe it's really more easy to play for white. Maybe you're right. Yes, I agree.
It's just slight. I don't necessarily think it's anything huge, but the fact that white can play king f3, and if the rook leaves g8, you can go g4, things like that. She plays bishop b6, so that way she does not allow the black rook to an open file. The h file is controlled by white. The d8 square is controlled by the bishop on b6. So limiting the mobility of black's rook is what Kosteniuk is doing, and then c5 because king d5, king c6 potentially to kick this bishop out. What do you think about this?
Maybe rook c8, rook c6 is another option. I'm not so sure about it, but this is also possible. King d5 was chosen. Okay.
I think you wanted to move the rook because now rook h5 or rook h7 both actually attack these doubled f pawns, and moving the king away from them seems like it makes them harder to protect, and it does. And rook h7 played, king e6. So I think that based on the last couple moves, it looks like Alexandra is playing more, and Anna's a little bit stuck here. She's going to have a hard time making moves.
Yes, also Alexandra, she has more time on the clock. That's also important. We saw yesterday how important time was and how Humpy sometimes didn't manage to cope with time well. Rook c8, so now Anna goes for my plan. Rook c8, rook c6.
So she went for the king march. She didn't like it. Now she brings her rook over. She's like, well, Anna, she's my teammate, my compatriot. She has good advice, even though she obviously can't hear us. But let's bring the rook up to c6 to kick this bishop. And black is up a pawn on the queen side, so you want to actually start pushing those pawns and create a pass pawn. And you could play c4 and try to play c3 as well. So now the time is getting closer to even, and black has some play on the queen side. I think that Alexander's thinking about g4 here. It's a big decision. Am I able to push g4 and then start pushing my pawns on the king side? And she may be thinking about bishop a5 to c3 first, just to protect this pawn e5 so that your pawns can really push forward.
Yeah, there are still possibilities to improve white's position while black just have to wait. g4 was played. You are right about that. I think you already know how women are thinking.
I wouldn't go that far. I just have commentated enough chess games to know that in certain moments when a player is thinking for a while, you're like, what is she thinking about? Which plan is she going to go for? I personally thought that she should have refrained from going g4. She should have rerouted her bishop first with bishop a5. That way her bishop wasn't just sitting on b6, not really doing all that much, but she's threatening f5 check because now her bishop protects this pawn on e5. It's very important.
All right, so will Anna go for the checks? Now she decided to move the king to d7 and
I don't like this move. What about rook g8 now? Uh-oh.
Bishop a7. Take.
And now black is up a pawn.
So just rook g7 or rook f8. I preferred rook f8 because it was threatening f6, but anyway, there was rook f6.
Yes, and the king goes back to c7 to not allow rook to b6, and now white's king is very active. So I do believe that white has good counterplay here, but rook to g2, I would play for a win for black. I would just say, take my f pawn. I know you get a pass pawn, but after king c6 or king b6, I'm going to win your queenside pawns. And this is a very good opportunity for Anna to level this matchup, as I think it's really difficult to hold this game from white's point of view.
I really like, Robert, how you're guessing the moves. You have so much in that.
It's
f5.
I would call it a gift. It's also a curse sometimes. You know, it really depends on the day. And rook h6. So trying to keep this black king cut off. And importantly, this pawn on b3 stops black's life from being so easy in creating a pass pawn here. The king b6. Oh, I like king b6, king a5. This I didn't like. You just invited the white. Wait, you have to avoid rook f6 now.
Rook f6, yeah.
Oh, take on c4 and play rook f6.
I don't like it.
Is this
winning? I think Anna lost a threat.
Yeah, rook f6.
Rook f6 just wins.
It does. And king d5. And now you can't stop me from promoting. Oh, she's trying to promote
rook
directly.
King e5, rook e3, king d4, it's still winning.
Yeah, everything is winning now. She queen, and she wins the game. Oh my gosh. You know, sometimes you play for a win, you play for a loss. And that's what happened. I was the one who recommended that she go and take the pawn on b2, or, you know, get a rook on the second rank. She went for it, and it cost her the game. So maybe I'm to blame
here. I will tell her why she lost this game. Okay. Just because of Robert.
Maybe you shouldn't put it on me. Maybe you should not let her know that, if that's okay. Just, she can watch it. It's going to be on the internet forever, but maybe she won't watch it, in which case she'll never know. That's my fault.
Okay. It's the same line again. The same as we saw 2 games before. Alexander is repeating it, and I think it's logical because she had a good position. She had some problems later on, but in the beginning, her opening choice was okay, so she decided to repeat it. But now, no rook d1. Yes, a3 was played. No knight a4. Yes. No knight
yes,
a4.
because knight a4 was a bit too adventurous, I take it. And so she went towards more standard principles in theory. She played a3. She secured the bishop pair. And when you look at these positions, Anna, from my point of view, I've always played the Nimzo from the black side of things. When this knight gets to e4, I was like, yeah, I'm making some progress here. I'm getting some space. But then I'm like, but why has the 2 bishops? So who really has benefited from these trades?
I think we will know soon, yes, but looks like the knight on e4 is well placed, but on the other hand, if white goes knight e1 followed by f3, then it's a big question where you will move this knight. Usually it goes to g5, but on g5 it's not looking as nice as on e4. So knight e1 and f3, it's a typical plan in such kind of the position, and the way to get rid of this active knight on e4.
Yeah, it's just annoying to have that knight kicked back out to a square like g5, and maybe h4 is possible sometimes for white. And what white really wants to accomplish is f3 and then e4 at some point. Not very easy when pretty much all of black's pieces are staring at the square to kick the knight and then seize control yourself. But clearly, Alexandra is sitting and thinking here, because it's not easy to come up with a move, as this knight can also go into d3 and then maybe into f4, or once you get to d3, are you going to play for pawn c5? It's a very standard pawn break on the queen side here. So black's pieces look excellently placed, but now that they're being kicked out, it's like, well, where do I go from here?
Queen e8 was played, and the queen is heading to h5 square, well, where it can make some threats. But the queen on h5, yeah, I don't like it so much, because if white goes with knight f4, then the queen will have to retreat. I don't see lots of danger coming
Those
from black
don't
side.
sometimes don't you invite the knight to f4 so you can play g5 with a tempo? Like, it's very high level kind of thought process. But if the knight goes to f4 now, I probably play a move like g5. And so sometimes you invite your opponent's piece out just so you can gain a tempo on the next move. It's strange to think in those terms, but that does happen sometimes. With bishop c6, what is the point of that move, Anna? I'm not quite sure I get it. It's to move the knight away from e4 and try to trade bishops, but that doesn't seem right.
I don't really know. I had the same question, and I wanted to ask you that, because I thought that c5 is also a standard play for black, but when the bishop is on c6, it's more difficult to do that. So maybe you will have to get your bishop back to b7 or to a8 now, because Alexandra played rook c8. Rook c8, maybe she's trying to defend the c7 pawn in case white goes d5.
Mm-hmm.
So it was...
But it really begs the question of why bishop c6 was played, because d5 is more powerful. She brings it to d7. And
now you got the answer.
we got the answer. I'm wondering, because she could have played bishop c8 to d7. I guess if she had played bishop c8 earlier, then f3 and e4 would have happened very quickly. So now I understand it much more clearly. It doesn't mean that I really love it, and maybe she felt she had to do it, but it feels like black's last couple of moves were a little clumsy. And now white continues to have good spatial control. Do you play for c5? Do you play for f3 here? Is black going to try to play a move like e5? Doesn't really look possible, but I'm just looking at ways to gain some space here. Is g5 going to happen? Risky move, but one that you still look at. I like white's position for sure.
Perhaps after f3, knight g5, it's more logical if black goes e5 now, but no. And knight h5.
And a big question is, am I actually worried about you playing knight takes f4? I don't think so. I'll just take with my g pawn. I'm not upset about that. A semi-open g file would probably be beneficial for white, as there's a potential attack. So knight h5 doesn't quite threaten anything, is the essential point here. And you can't play e4 or anything, because then I'll take on f4, that's for sure. But
Can you go knight d3?
Just to avoid the trade? Then black would have went f4, I guess.
f4, g4 was my idea.
You just... Yeah, that makes sense. You're just combating my potential threat with a simple pawn push, and it would have been a struggle. Taking on h5 feels like it helps black, though. This I don't love so much, because knight h3 check will be annoying.
Knight h3 is maybe what black wants, therefore h4 was played. Knight f7. The knight on f7, it's not a good piece. Black would prefer to have the knight on f6, because on f7 it doesn't have so many active moves, and it's not controlling the center. True. So maybe g5 can be an option. It's a very dangerous move, because if you open this diagonal, then queen c3 and d5 may come. E4.
How about f4 now? That's my initial reaction, is if you play e4, I'm playing f4 because I want to take your h4 pawn.
I really liked f4. It's like some typical move, because, I am a Dutch player. For black, I really like Dutch. It's the opening will start with the move d4, f5. And it's very typical. If white goes e4, there is always an idea to respond with f4. So that's what I'm always thinking when I see e4. I really like to go for f4.
Wow, I mean, the Dutch defense is one that's not really played. I mean, it's played sometimes, but if that's your choice there, more power to you, because I've always found the Dutch defense to be a little shaky, at least strategically. But it's a matter of style more than anything. So I'm not going to criticize your Dutch defense. Don't worry.
No, it's fine.
Well, the question is, do you play the French defense?
I tried to play it a couple of times, but it's not my main.
Okay,
opening.
so I can still talk to you, because the French defense, you can hit me with the Dutch, that's all good. But then when you start talking about the French defense, do you really care about your light square bishop? The answer would be no if you played the first. Anyway, back to the chessboard that we have here. Bishop f4 played. White's pieces are looking perfect. Right? This queen on e4 looks good. Bishop on f4 has activated. G5 is harder to play. So, in fact, Alexandra plays h6 to play g5. I'm sort of worried about this queen on h5. Like, it doesn't have so many squares. So bishop h3 and bishop g4 would trap this queen. And that's what I'm kind of looking at. Okay, instead we have g5 for black. No more queen traps.
The bishop will move somewhere. Before Alexander tried knight h6, she was trying to put her knight on f5, but then I think she realized there is d4, so she just retreated the knight back to f7. But the knight on f7, I think it's the worst piece in black's position. This knight is so passive. King f2, I like it.
Love that move. Love that move because now rook h1. And I think a lot of our less experienced players would be like, how could you move your king when there's so many pieces on the board? But the king wasn't so happy on g1 anyway. And now white has taken control of the open file. But is this...
Maybe now f4, trying to open another bishop.
You stop rook a8. Instead, she plays bishop to f1, which trying to go bishop d3 check and then force the king away from the g5 pawn. So she's just trying to win material very directly. And now that I see it played, I like it. At first, I was like, wait, what's bishop f1? Now I get it, and now I think it's a good move.
Bishop c6 may be the move, trying to attack the f3 pawn, but in that case, white has d5 and it's blocking everything. It's not easy to play with black. Not easy.
I would maybe play e5, not because I really want to play it, but because I feel like everything else is a problem. Now d5, as you were just saying, is looking like a big problem for... Isn't black losing a piece somehow? Like bishop d3 check, d5, and like bishop b2 check. Don't I just get my bishops out and just check your king away from this knight on h6?
Seems like a good move. d5.
Yeah,
Anna saw it.
So
I guess black can't take on d5 because it's just losing a piece.
You have to play a move like bishop b7, and then bishop takes g5. This pawn's also hanging over here. So this is, I think, a big, big, big problem.
Bishop b7. Okay, bishop g5. There is some check on g4.
And then I'll move my king out the way and say congratulations on your very lovely check. You know how to make use of pins here. And what next? And the answer is nothing.
Yeah, the answer is king e2, and you have to move the knight, and then bishop h6 is coming.
Yeah, so just don't play king g2.
Anna will win this game.
Oh, king g2 is also good, actually, but she plays it. I was saying not to play it because you're opening up your king to a big check, but she's going to go for a checkmate first against this king on g8.
Oh, it's getting very sharp. Anna is going for a mate. She's not satisfied with some piece or exchange. She just wanted to mate, and she won the game.
Wow.
Finally.
Anna wins the game, and it's good because the match is now closer. It's 2.5, 1.5 in Alexandra's favor. This has really been an interesting match thus far. Some crazy tactics stemming from positions that look more strategic in nature. So I've liked the trajectory of this match, and this line here in the Petra with c4. What do you think about this variation?
I played it once or twice. It's a bit tricky. It's not so popular, but black has to know how to react to it because bishop f5, it's not the main move, but maybe it's not a bad move. It's developing the pieces, so it's definitely not a very bad move, but maybe not the best reaction. So let's see what will happen next. Knight c3. Now both of the side, they are just developing the pieces. I hope to see some bishop e7 or knight c6, bishop e7.
Is white's plan to eventually push this pawn to d4 and say, okay, I have a good control over the center here, even though at first it looks strange? Okay, the question is answered. I don't even need to continue. So we'll move on to the next subject. Is white going to play... Okay, question answered before I could even ask it. I was going to say, is white going to play bishop e2 or try to trade bishops? We see what Alexandra played for, and now I'm going to stop talking. Anna, what do you make of what's happened over the course of the last few moves?
D5, I think it was the right approach in general. And there was a big question if white had to play C5 or they had to just play something like a castle. Because if white castle, there was a possibility to take on C4 and then white would have to play with the isolated pawn. And there is a big question if it was in white's favor or if it was okay for black. But C5 was played and B6 I like. Because when the pawn is on c5, it's controlling too much space, so better to get rid of this pawn.
Definitely, because the bishop on e7 is restricted by that pawn, and white can't play b4. So I'll just show that very quickly. b4, black plays a5, and you just break down the pawn chain because a3 is the move you'd like to play. But note, there's an unprotected rook on a1, and there's a happy rook on a8. So a takes b4 would be a big problem, as you can't take back or you lose your rook. So let's go back to the live position, and bishop e3 was played by Alexandra, and she's trying to keep this pawn on c5, as Anna was just saying, hey, this pawn c5 is restricting black's pieces. So Alexander's like, yeah, it is, and I want to keep it there. So c6 was the choice by Anna here. Well, it's so weird now that there are two Annas, so I have to differentiate between them. By Ushenina chooses c6, and I'm wondering if she will try to take on c5 at some point and play queen over to a5.
Or she just plays knight d7 because she played c6. If she played knight d7 first, there were some options of playing c6. So maybe she decided to play c6 first and now knight bd7. No, she decided to take first on c5. What will happen now? Will she play knight d7 or will she play a5 first? Because if knight bd7, then b4 is coming.
Right.
That's why a5 was played.
That's a really good thought process. And you just heard Anna here talking about, well, I want to play knight d7, develop, attack the pawn c5, but I know if I do that, I'll allow white to play b4. So let me start with the move a5, and then I can even put my knight on a6 if for some reason that feels better. But knight coming to d7, of course, goes after the c5 pawn. And actually, knight a6 does make some sense because you leave the d7 square for the other knight, and you pile up all the pressure. So that's why Alexandra played knight to e5, saying if you move that knight from b8, well, thank you for your free c6 pawn. And here knight to d7 was played instead. We're going to trade and play knight a4. And Anna, we have a totally different type of position now, a new dynamic. Is that pawn on a5 going to be a huge weakness that black needs to defend? Is this pawn on d5 eventually going to be a pass pawn that I can use? Whose position would you prefer to have at this point?
Maybe black, because if you go to the pawn endgame, this pawn on d5 will definitely be a strong pawn. But how to trade all the pieces, I don't know. Don't ask it.
I wasn't going to ask you, but now that you told me not to ask, so Anna, how would you go about trading all the pieces?
I can try to play knight e5 followed by knight c4, but I only trade the knight for the bishop, so there are still too many pieces left. What are the other options to play rook b4? Rook b4 was played, b3 will be answered very quickly. It was.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe something like queen c7.
What about d4?
Sorry?
What about d4 here for black? Oh, she didn't play it.
D4 was a good tactical shot. I didn't have time to calculate it. D4, bishop d4, knight e5. Oh, Robert, you have seen too many women's games.
No. I have seen so many games that, and like I always say, I suggest the tactics when I see them, and if it's wrong, all right, I'm wrong. I'm okay being wrong. It's fine. Everybody, it's International Chess Day. If I make a mistake, we're all learning something from why I made that mistake. So it's okay. I'm just happy to suggest crazy tactics, even if they don't work.
So let's speak about d4 now. Okay, we were a bit late because it was the same idea, d4, bishop d4, knight e5. That's why after d4, white wouldn't have captured that pawn. They would have gone for bishop d2 or bishop f4. I believe bishop d2 attacking the rook on b4.
I still am waiting for d4 to happen. So bishop d2 is played. No longer is there d4, but rook b5 just, wait, that pawn c5 is lost now.
Is it lost? Yeah, there are 1, 2, 3 pieces are attacking that pawn. Queen g3, heading for the pawn on h6.
I like queen g3. It at least allows white to attack something. And as you pointed, the pawn h6 under attack. Where does this king go? Probably to I can go to f8 actually, but king on f8 looks a little bit strange because I'm worried about rook to e1 and some kind of sacrifices on e7. So the king goes to h8 where it's tucked in the corner, feeling somewhat safe and sound.
Maybe bishop c3 now, attacking the g7 pawn. And if the bishop goes to f6, then you trade the bishops and then you can defend the c5 pawn finally.
I was going to say, I didn't know what you were threatening with bishop c3. It was just, why would Anna put her bishop on c3? Well, it's a checkmate.
Hidden threat.
And rook e1 was played. So it's interesting because the pawn c5 is what Anna Ushenina was going after. And now we see that Alexander's going to go for that pawn because your king is in the corner over there. I have a queen on g3, now a rook on the open file. Perhaps I can unleash a pretty big attack. And d4, at long last.
d4, your favorite move. The move you wanted to make. Finally, it was played.
I'm a happy camper now. The pawn has been pushed to d4. I don't know if it's good, but at least it's been played. And this pawn c5 is still very weak. Still probably going to be captured in the very near future. I think that black has good chances here.
Knight c5 now? Can we take it?
You should take it. That's a pawn that's hanging and 2 attackers, 1 defender. That's good for black. And I guess you can trade on e8 and try to play for queen d6 at some point. I mean, take on c5, take on e8, play queen d6. I'm just not sure it really amounts to anything more than some initiative, some play there, but black is up a pawn. So you're kind of offsetting a material advantage for black with probably more harmonious pieces for white. Although after rook to c1, it's clear that she's going right after the c6 pawn. And the pawn's not that easy to defend.
I like rook c1 because Alexander is trying to keep more pieces on the board, and that's definitely what she should do. Maybe queen d3 now, blocking the d pawn, because if it was black to move, I think black would love to play d3, but they actually love to play rook e2.
Well, now the a2 pawn is attacked through the bishop and also pressure on f2. So bishop h4 will become a pretty big threat in the next couple moves because f2 isn't that easy to defend. And the d pawn, as you pointed out, it can go to d3. When you have a passed pawn, you should always consider pushing it, which will, in addition, free up the d4 square for the bishop. So rook to d1 was chosen by Alexandra here. And what next? d3 is always possible. a4, wow. Giving up the pawn to try to free up the c pawn to go to c5, c4. What do you make of that decision, though? Because now white has an outside pass pawn.
I think she was considering queen a2 in the beginning, but then she realized there is queen c8 followed by queen f5, and that would be a perpetual check. Oh, this pawn on a6, it starts worrying me.
It feels like a very strong pass. Here it goes.
Oh God!
Wait, that pawn just went from b3. It took on it made it all the last 4 moves. Took on a4, a5, a6, a7. Now bishop a5 to b6 and rook to b1 to b8. That's just even more direct.
Maybe Anna shouldn't have gone for a4 because the pawn was on b3 and now it's on a7. Can you imagine? Just in 4 moves.
I don't think you can be sad about that if you are Alexandra. However, these pawns on c4 and d4 on those are actually pretty scary. So c3 played, you're trying to get your pawns closer to promotion, and your bishop on f6 protects the pawn on c3. So d3 is possible as c3 is defended. Okay, here we go.
The rook trade on queen b8.
And then d2. No, but then you just take on 8 and you rinse and repeat. That's so frustrating. You know, you go for a new queen. 8 equals queen.
No, again, I mean, when there is some pawn rush, Alexandra is always quicker. I don't know how she does it, but she's doing it perfectly.
Wait. But this is actually complex, isn't it? Because black's getting a new queen too.
Yes, d1 is coming. So
oh my gosh.
It's like queen d5 and to threaten queen f5 check.
Queen a8 to g8 and threatens queen h7 checkmate. So the king has to go to f5. Oh wait,
it's
not
me.
me.
4 queens on the board. Can you imagine that? 4 queens on the board. But it will be a checkmate soon for black because white is starting. Yeah, white is starting first with the checks. So queen h7.
Check and play g4, and then you just checkmate immediately.
Check. Well, no, check. No, queen from h8 to h7, and now queen h5, queen f7, and it's like queen h4 and then g3. G3 is the checkmate.
It's funny
Oh
how
god.
difficult it was to find the checkmate because we were looking at like all these different possibilities, and yet that was a very straightforward and forcing checkmate that Alexandra found.
But that was a very painful game for Anna because, in fact, she had chances. She had good chances to win this game, but she lost it in the end. Pity.
You know, that's what happens in speed chess. Like
I
you,
know. I know it perfectly. I mean, I know it's better than you, Robert, because I played in this tournament, and yeah, I had so many games like that when I was pushing and then I was lost in the end. So, I mean, I have suffered so many painful losses in this tournament.
do you need to talk about it, or should we change the subject?
I think we shall change this topic.
Okay, because if you need to talk about it, everybody is here for you. Just
I know. I know that many people were supporting me, so thank you all. I'll try to do better in the next events. So
And-
let's speak about this game.
okay, well, we've seen two minor pieces traded. None of the pawns have come off the board, and the queen has indeed come to e7, something that Anna has talked about in previous games. Now, knight to d2, that's an interesting move by white, trying to perhaps play bishop to f3, although black has now completed her development with no weaknesses in her position. I think the opening has gone very well for black.
And knight c6, attacking the pawn on d4, so white had to take the decision, and white decided to go for d5. So now I'm expecting some trade on d5 and then knight e5. Some Benoni structure. We had some similar Benoni structure yesterday. Knight d8.
And that
Knight
way
d8 I don't like. Now look at this knight on d8.
she wanted to play f5. And the thing is about the Benoni structure, you want to play f5, but just because you play it doesn't mean that your position is suddenly good. Right? There's a rook on c3 that can swing to e3. There's the second rook can try to come to e1. That's why she played bishop f3. And I think black should play f4, knight f7, knight e5.
Oh yeah, the knight on e5, then it will be a good piece. But the knight on d8 is a bad piece.
Agreed. And if knight f7, now bishop e6 says your knight is not getting there. And I can also put my knight on f3 or c4. So good move by Alexandra. The bishop on b7 was doing nothing but staring into a brick wall on d5. So let's play bishop c8 and trade off my poor light square bishop.
Oh, will white take on c8, or they will want to wait with this decision, or they will want black to take on g4 and then develop its queen to g4? I don't know.
I think that black, she won't take on g4. She'll play knight f7, knight e5 anyway. So it's maybe not so much of a big choice to think about too much. So she does take, and now queen g4. And if knight f7, the f4 pawn is hanging. So perhaps that's why she chose this move order.
So rook c7 looks logical now.
It does indeed. And then you can move your queen and bring your rook to f7 or something like that. Switch flanks.
But now black needs one more move to defend the f4 pawn. So I think black wants to play something like queen f6 and then continue with the plan like knight f7, knight e5, g3.
What about knight f7 now? Nah, it doesn't work. I was trying to give you the f4 pawn and say I have a quick counterplay, but if you take with the queen, I don't have access to the f3 square. I saw g3 and immediately want to put my knight on e5 and attack your weak squares. Just wasn't going to work, so I take it back.
I like queen f6 because it's defended the f4 pawn. Also, you may think now of bringing the rook to f7, rook cf7. Just switch the plans a little bit.
And you also stopped white's rook from coming to f3 because the b2 pawn was hanging behind it. So the queen did it all from there. And now we see this trade. And isn't this just nice for black? Because the knight's coming to e5.
I somehow realized that if there is a possibility to trade the queens and go for endgame, Anna always takes it. She prefers to play the endgames. She likes them so much. Maybe she will play f3 now, bring the king to e3, then bring the knight to c4.
Oh, knight c4 is good because I want to play knight f7, but you'll play knight c4, and that stops me from playing knight e5. But after knight c4, there could be b5, and probably should be b5. And now it's getting very complex because if you cut the board in half, that's a concept everybody should be familiar with now. Black has 4 pawns on the A through D files, and more importantly, 3 pawns, A7, B5, C5 versus 2 pawns for white. And black is facing a pawn deficit if you go over to the center of the board, right? E4 is in F3 are unopposed pawns, whereas black has pawns on G7 and C5, right? So it's a different dynamic.
Will we see knight f5 now? Attacking the d6 pawn, yes. Anna played knight f5, and now it's a big question if black will try to defend the d6 pawn or they will go for exchange sacrifice. I was thinking about rook f5. I don't know if it worked, but with giving the exchange, I wanted to spoil a white's pawn structure.
And you're learning very well when they're not your pieces, go for the exchange sacrifice. When we're commentating, it's a good idea to look at, and it probably didn't pan out quite as well as White would have liked in that position, but that is something that you should consider, especially if your king gets to f6. Rook takes f5 is something that black will be looking for. And honestly, Anna, the dark square control here, knight on e5, rook on f4, pawn on g5, it feels like, ooh, that's a really nice move, knight to d4, hitting b5, trying to undermine the pawns and threatening knight e6. So what I was going to say is not as relevant as I thought it was.
It looks like this position is really very complex because each side has its own trumps. White has a beautiful knight on d4, while black has also a very good knight on e5. So it's not so clear what's going on.
Knight f5. Oh, I thought knight f5 cut off the rooks and threatened knight h6 check.
Which rook? Which rook to take with rook cf3? Yeah, I think it makes more sense because if rook f3, then g takes f3 and this pawn starts running. And Alexandra is very good when she has some pawns. She's just running with them and somehow it's very quickly. So what is it now by material? Okay, it's equal.
It's equal by material. White has the outermost passed pawn. Then when this knight moves from b5, there will be white playing b5, a5, etc. And so that's the annoying thing. The problem for white, though, is the knight can't take on a7 or on d6 because the c pawn would run. And this knight on e5 is really well placed here. So I like black's passed pawns. They're protected by the knight on e5. And white, I like the outside passed pawn, but you can't really make any progress over there. At least it doesn't feel like it to me.
It seems like any side can make any progress, but maybe I am wrong. I mean, if black just stays with the king on c7 and b7, okay, white can bring the king to e3, but what is next?
I don't see anything next, really. It's a weird position where both sides are stuck, but for very different reasons. Right? Black is stuck because if the king went over to the king side, then there'd be b6 and a promotion. For white, the knight needs to stop one pawn, the king needs to stop the other, and so you can't pile up pressure on a single pawn. Maybe you could play knight b1 to d2. No.
Knight d1 and b2. And
then black goes c3. And like at least you've pushed that pawn, which sounds good for black, but then the pawn's in a more vulnerable square potentially. No, I think it's too risky. I think you should just accept the fact that,
no, I hope she's not going to play knight b2. It's too risky. It's too risky, Anna.
No, she plays knight c3.
It's just our petition.
We see a draw here, and I do think that Anna missed a really good chance in that game. She went knight takes b5, and I think if we just go back very quickly to that position, I think that there was a knight f5 move that cut off the rooks and threatened knight h6 check, in addition to the d6 pawn being under attack. I'm not positive that it was winning, but it did cut off the circulation between all black's pieces and would have won some material.
I think it was definitely an interesting option, and maybe it was a better one. Yeah, I like your knight f5 suggestion.
It also possibly played for a loss in addition to win. That's the thing. An exchange sacrifice happens. You don't know. Anyway, we have this position here starting from the bishop's opening, and it looks kind of like an Italian, but there's a knight on c3 rather than a pawn on c3, which you typically see here. And c6 for playing for d5 is standard opening choice by black. So, d6 instead. No d5, at least not yet.
Not yet. Will it be played later? We will know very soon. Bishop g5 was played. I think bishop g5 is the move that Alexandra really likes to make because she's playing Italian very often, and when she does it, she plays the bishop on g5 whenever it's possible. So in this position, she decided to do it too.
And the point of putting the bishop on g5, of course, was a pin. But if you take on f6 ever, it makes black's trying to play d5 much more difficult because the knight on d7, knight on f6 protect both d5 and e5. And if one of those pieces is removed, then one of the squares is harder to keep defended.
But the difference with the Italian is that in Italian, the black knight from b8 always goes to c6. Yes. While here, Anna managed to go knight bd7, and now she can play something like knight f8, knight g6, and then she will get rid of the spin.
Well, yes, isn't black kind of playing the Italian here?
It's black who's playing Italian here.
Actually, right? And white has the knight on c3 like the knight would be on c6. So it's kind of like black's playing the Italian.
It's like Italian reversed.
Yeah. And king h1 is a move you often see, right? Where the knight moves out the way you play for f4 and some of these variations. So it does actually look like an Italian for black.
So what's the plan? Knight g6 and then push d5?
I would even consider bishop g4 just so I can try to get my knight to h5. I know f3 can be played, but that at least gives me the future knight h5 move. And d5 also looks pretty good here, just gaining space in the center.
I'd have gone for d5. It's just easier and direct.
Don't play queen f3 because then bishop g4 does a little more than attack the queen. It wins the queen. So queen f3 is the move you want to play to put pressure on d5, but it is a huge blunder and you should not do that.
So maybe h3 and then queen f3. If you want to play queen f3 first, play h3, please.
Yes. Long live the queen. And
oh, look.
The chess queen says h3. I'm listening to Anna Muzichuk, that is, not Ushenina. And here we see h3 played, so queen f3, I believe, will be next.
Bishop e6 was Anna's answer, Anna Ushenina's answer. And speaking about the opening, I think Anna has a good position. She didn't have any problems in this line. Moreover, we see that she's kind of sticking to the openings. She's playing e5 while Alexandra is trying to play something new in every game. She tried Petrov with d4, then she tried Petrov with c4, and now she went for a bishop opening with second move bishop c4. So she's trying to check what Anna has prepared in every direction. That's also a strategy.
Yeah, some people prefer the consistency, other people prefer chaos, and we have seen some chaotic games, and we've also seen many games that looked like they were pretty level, and then there were different ideas for the two players, and things got a bit wild, and in blitz chess, anything can happen. So the queen eventually has landed on f3, but black has this big center of d5 and e5 pawns. The d5 pawn is well defended by 3 pieces. The pawn e5 is defended by just this knight on g6 for now, although a move like bishop to d4 at some point can be played, although it doesn't really look that appealing. So what are the strategies, Anna, here for both sides? Like, what do you see the next few moves looking like?
I was a bit surprised because I didn't understand why you didn't like bishop d4 so much. If the knight can't move from c3, then maybe it's not a bad move, but there can be some tricks like bishop d4, knight b5, and we can give this pawn. Okay, it looks like black has a very nice center. I mean, these pawns on d5 and e5 are really good, but black has to take care of them because white will try to attack them. They did play rook e1. Perhaps they will take on e5 now. If white takes on e5, black is going to take back and then to take on c3. So
there are also ideas with d4 that need to be calculated. I have not calculated them. I'm just saying they need to be calculated, and I hope you'll do the calculation for me. So
rook e2, I'm a bit puzzled with this move because black can at least take on c3 and twice and take this pawn. So if white takes on e5 now, but why didn't she take on e5 immediately? Was there any problem of taking on e5 immediately?
I think she was worried about d4. I really do. I didn't calculate it all out.
Knight b1, yes, maybe she did, or knight e4. Maybe she didn't want to play passively, yes.
Yeah, this way she doesn't have to calculate it. She says, okay, you take on c3, you win a pawn. I take on e5, I win that pawn back. You gave up your dark square bishop. Now I'm giving up my dark square bishop. And what is Anna thinking about? Is there bishop g? No. Well, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, because otherwise you would have taken immediately, but bishop g4, bishop
What a move.
f6, bishop f3. So,
She plays
yeah,
it.
she did play bishop g4. Exciting.
I think if I were Alexandra, I'm taking on c3 here. And it's a not easy move to play, and she takes on g4, but somehow I don't like opening up my king, and I feel safer without my queen. Like, I know I would have been down some material, but I thought there were good chances. I'll show them the board very quickly. Bishop takes c3, bishop takes f3, rook e8, queen e8 or knight e8. I'm not sure. The knight takes f3, and I thought the bishop pair looked really good with the rook against the queen, and that would have been a position where I think white's not even really that much worse, if you're worse at all. Instead, we saw h takes and rook takes e5, and maybe white's not worse here either, and I'm just afraid for no reason. But taking on g4 with the pawn worried me.
Bishop c3 was a cool move. I mean, you sacrifice the queen, but then somehow your position looks really good with all these bishops controlling a lot of squares. Instead, Alexandra preferred not to sacrifice anything. She just decided to capture back on g4. But now I like Anna's position. Rook c7, rook e7, then threaten knight e5. Because this bishop on b3 is blocked. It's looking on d5 pawn, but if you're not attacking it, then it's blocking the bishop.
It's true. And the knight on d2 isn't doing what it needs to. So maybe knight f1 to e3 or something like that. The knight needs to improve its place. The pawn on d5, as I often say, a pawn 3 squares away from a knight often will dominate that knight. The knight can't go to c4, it can't go to e4. So what is that knight really doing on d2?
At d4, it's quite committal because you're weakening the e4 square. I'm not sure it was really necessary. But on the other hand, d4 prevents black from playing knight e5, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and maybe white will play c3, bishop c2 at some moment. I don't really love that idea, but it's something that you have to consider. And queen d7 says, hey, your pawn on g4 is under attack. And wait a second, how do you actually defend it?
We can try to take on e7. Alexandra just doesn't pay attention. She thinks that black can't take the pawn on g4. Okay, they can take, but then there are some problems with the pawn on d5. Are there? Knight g4. Okay, we can't take bishop d5 because queen d5 will come with the check. Check first.
This looks like it's getting good for black to me. Oh, 95 maybe? 95 played, okay.
Knight takes e5. Queen takes e5. Just trying to play for activity.
Yeah, white needs to be active here because she's down a pawn. She is up just about 10 seconds now. So that's something we should note is the clock situation. And how is she going to take back? I think both moves look interesting. Taking with the pawn or taking with the queen. Queen takes e5. It keeps the position a little more stable. So I like your move. Whereas d takes e5 is like playing for a win almost.
Maybe queen takes e5 and then try to push c4.
Open up the bishop. She takes the pawn. And the d5 pawn, is that going down right? Queen f5, there's f3, important move. Uh-oh.
All right.
How does black... knight c5
How to defend the pawn? Oh, knight c5?
Yeah.
Knight c5. If queen d5, queen takes d5, and then knight a4. If bishop b7, then knight c3, and the pawn is running.
You can't stop it. Can you?
a4, king e3, a3, king d3, a2. No, white needs one tempo.
That's just winning.
White really needs one more tempo.
And she's not getting it. So it's a resignation, and now it's a 1-point match.
It's 4-3. Yes.
And you had said queen takes e5 instead of pawn takes e5 in that game. And I said you're kind of playing for an initiative, but you're also potentially playing for a loss. And unfortunately for Alexandra, that resulted in a defeat. And that's great news for Anna, who was able to cut the deficit in half from 2 games to 1. And now we see f3 on move 3 by Anna here, trying to play e4, and look at this knight c6 move. These positions get pretty crazy, where e4, there's some e5 stuff. Anna, what do you make of the opening change that we've seen?
Oh, I didn't know b6, second move b6 from black. It's a very rare opening. But f3, Anna played it so quickly, so maybe she was prepared for that, or I don't know, or maybe she knows this theory. He's still playing very quickly, so we see that white gained some space advantage. But on the other hand, black has an easy play now. I mean, g6, bishop g7, e6, or c6. You clearly have to do something. No, g6 was not played.
Well,
Knight
I
g6.
think a potential problem on is having too many options, right? Like you said, e6, g6, c6. It's like, which one do I do? And then instead of spending the time, it's what Alexandra said to us in the interview yesterday. She just believes in moving quickly. Like, of course, she plays well almost all of the time, but there are certain situations where instead of spending 30 seconds to find like a single move, she's like, let me just play knight g6, let me just play e5, and now she's ahead on the clock.
Now we see something like the king's Indian structure on the board, but I don't like how black developed the pieces because the knight on g6, potentially it's staying under the attack because white will later on play h4, h5. I believe white will go for a long castle in this position and h4, h5. It's like,
Yeah. I also like White's position. I think that's what you're sort of saying here. more space, great pawns, no weaknesses. Black is stuck. Look at these bishops and these knights. Like White has all the space with the pawns in the center and this big pawn chain. Black has to play some kind of c6, and then what does that even do? You take on d5, I take back. Good for you. Trade didn't help all that much. So no space here for the chess queen.
Anna went for g3, so maybe she is trying to play bishop d2 and then go for short castle, though I really prefer castling long. I don't know.
You
I
think
think
she's not worried? That's a little strong, but do you think she's in the back of her mind thinking, wait a second, Alexandra, she's a very good tactician. Maybe she'll get an attack if I castle queenside with a b5 type of move. Do you think that's going through her mind? Or, well, she played knight to c1. She has not castle queenside yet, and maybe she never will.
maybe she just wanted not to allow b5. Maybe she will even play a4 now because she's too much worried. Okay, she placed her knight on d3, so if b5 comes, then she is going to play c5. I don't think Alexandra will repeat this opening in the next games because it doesn't look she has a good position here. I don't like her position.
I don't like it either. How I do like that she's up almost a minute on time. And what else do I like? That's about it for now. I think if she can play f7 to f5, there are some threats in the center, and she can have some more activity. But there's a knight on f6, and moving out the way just takes up some time. So I like White's position. I just don't know how to improve it. And that's always the issue I have on. I don't know if you feel the same way, where it's a great looking position, but I don't know which moves to make to turn it from something that looks good to something that is concretely good.
Yes, it's a difficult topic. How to improve your position? While Alexandra plays knight h7, so she definitely wants to play f5 on the next move. I was also thinking about playing c5 for black and then trying to play b5. And maybe it's another option. Should be 2 f5. What will Anna do now?
She might play g. Well, she can't play g4. The h4 pawn's hanging. This is the big problem of having your king in the center. Is if the king were on a1, if you had castle queenside and brought the king all the way to the other side of the board, then g4 would be a great idea. But with the king on e1, maybe it's a good move anyway. I just am a little more nervous to play it.
And knight f4, so knight is coming to e4. Another option was to play knight b4, trying to place the knight on c6, but knight b4 could be met by bishop d7 perhaps, so Anna preferred knight f2. It's a nice move.
But I think the other Anna, that's you, preferred knight to b4.
I think about because I prefer to go forward, you know.
I am with you. Another benefit of knight f2 though is that there's no check on h4, so you can play g4, and there will be no bishop takes h4 check. I know that it's vague, but at some moment that could be important, and g4 is something that Anna likely wants to play, and she'll put her knight on e4. We've talked about this kind of King's Indian pawn structure where you take on f5 and free the e4 square. So I do think that she has many options available to her.
Bishop d7. Is she trying still to push b5? Is that Alexandra's idea? Bishop d3, so will she? No, she decided. Queen
Queen
e8.
c2? I mean, this stuff's like a problem for black on the diagonal.
Rook f3.
Oh, you can steal my pawn. You stole my pawn, but then bishop takes g6? Like,
rook e3, king d2. Yes, looks good for white. And Anna did go for that.
yes.
So
Right, that was sneakier. I just like kind of rook takes f3. I dismissed it, and then you said it, and I was like, wait, maybe I am missing something here. But it does feel like this knight on g6 falls too quickly with an attack on the queen, attack on h7. So rook f6, only move played. This position looks so nice for white. I could see it collapsing though if you don't play accurately.
Bishop e4.
I'm highlighting in green all of these pieces for white because I like all of them. I just
Do you have a favorite one?
But the problem is I want to share the e4 square with my knight and my bishop. So that's the annoying thing. I actually do not want my bishop there. I want my knight there. But if I move my bishop, then the f3 pawn is an issue. On the other hand, black has no way to march forward, and the position does not look fun at all. All of her pieces are stepping on each other's toes. Very cramped.
And maybe the plan can be something like queen f7, followed by g6, queen g7, and g5, but it's so long.
And we just received a question. Wasn't bishop g5 after rook f6 winning? And the answer is probably. Because the rook is under attack and needs to stay protecting this knight. And knight g5, hg5 only helps kick the rook away. Yep, that looked really good. So now we get back to the live position. Good eye there. And now we still have a very good looking position for white, but the game continues. Black is up 20 seconds here. How important do you think the time is right now compared to the position?
I think time is always important.
That was a very deep and philosophical thing to say. Time is always important. I agree. How important though?
Though the position is quite close, so it's really difficult to blunder something for white. But I mean, if you're, let's say, if you are under 10 seconds and you have to take some serious decisions, then maybe you will need this time. You really need to take care of it. I mean, not to think too much.
And I definitely have that problem where I try to think too much when I'm playing, and when I'm commentating, I throw out the moves and I'm like, oh, this sacrifice. But then I spend a lot of time playing, and I'm the one who's usually down on the clock. So here, knight to e4 just looks so good. What's the next move? Am I playing knight to g5 and I pawn to f4, trying to break open the position as I am more active here? I think f4 looks like a good next move.
Maybe b4. Yeah, b4. She did play b4. I was hoping for a5, at least trying to open the line for the rook on a8. But knight d7. What will be played now? g4?
So g4 I was also looking at. I was wondering if the h4 pawn is important in the slightest. I don't think so. So g4 looks really strong.
But I wasn't going to give you an h4 pawn. I thought about taking, I mean, g4, bishop takes e4, then I'll take with the bishop, and then I'll take the g6 pawn.
Oh, I was going to sacrifice my bishop. So if you go g4, I was going to play bishop takes h4 right away. And just
immediately. Good try.
I told you, not my pieces. I'm happy to sacrifice them. you should believe me.
The second day I'm learning that. So I can give the pieces, I can take the pieces.
Exactly.
When they are not mine.
Rook c6, putting pressure on. See, this is the, instead of being fully tactical, this is the strategic elements of a King's Indian type of pawn structure, just an Indian pawn structure, as the d6 pawn is always weak and the bishop on e7 is stuck just being defensive. However, black has much more play than she did even 5 moves ago, and I don't actually mind her position so much.
I think black's position improved a lot, because finally they got rid of one knight, so they have only one more. Now they won an exchange. Or white sacrificed it. Now it's completely unclear. Some e4 and knight g4.
There it is. E4 just played, and knight g4 coming. So I played bishop b5, good, and this bishop's going to try to come to d4 for white, but knight g4 check.
Knight g4 anyway, king g2.
All right, so how do we evaluate this endgame where white could be up in exchange if we trade everything on f3, take on e3, maybe rook f8 check first. Okay, she doesn't. This pawn on c6 is really strong, but is it worth an exchange?
Knight f4.
Bishop d6, I think you have to play.
Bishop d6. Some ideas with c7, but it wasn't working. Bishop g3 couldn't be played. I don't know.
Do it right now. Take it. She has to take it. Well, she doesn't have to, but I thought she should. Whoa. The king went up here. I don't like that. Rook d8, knight d7, all right.
King f5.
So g3 is falling. She takes it at long last. And king can't go up anymore, can it? No, this is good for black.
And now lost on time, seems so.
Wow, and with 20 seconds left on the match timer, so we now get one more 5-minute game. If you didn't have enough chess, you now essentially have received a free 5+1 game, because if that game had ended 20 seconds later, this match wouldn't happen, this game here.
Yes, but it's amazing. It's really incredible that Alexandra won the previous game, because it looked like she had no chances and her position was quite bad. But when it came to 20 seconds, and that's what I was speaking about, I mean, when you have only 20 seconds and then 10 seconds, you really feel a lot of pressure, you start blundering, you are not really controlling what's happening on the board, and eventually Anna even lost it. Alexander is really playing much better when it comes to huge time trouble, when it's like players are down to 20 seconds or something like that.
Right. I mean, she's been very impressive. We saw Humpy be extremely impressive without time, and now it is Alexandra's turn. Maybe she learned from Humpy.
Maybe yes. And here we see something very similar to what we have seen in game one. Maybe it's even the same position. No, because the rook is on e3, and in the previous game the rook was on e2. So it's already different.
Slightly, ever so slightly. And what is the difference, though? Because if white plays rook to... Actually, what I don't like about this rook on e3 is, can't black play knight to c4? And couldn't black have done that a move ago?
Good question.
I don't like this rook on e3. In fact, after rook e3, I understand that the rooks are trying to be double, but knight c4 would have hit the rook and the pawn on b2.
Why wasn't it played?
She played rook e8. No, she spent 20 seconds on rook e8. I don't know. I'm not sure at all. I mean, knight c4 looked very strong.
Yes, because on the next move after rook e8, Alexandra played knight bd2. She didn't go for rook e1, so I think she was concerned about knight c4.
And maybe that's just the mindset that Anna is in right now, where she's not feeling so confident in her game. She's down 2 points. She was so close to tying up the match a couple times, and then every time she makes it to 1, Alexandra wins, and it goes back to a 2-game lead. I have to go back to this move, rook e3. Knight c4, I don't actually see what the problem with this is, as it attacks the rook and attacks the pawn on b2. It looks very straightforward. So there must be something that I'm missing, maybe some kind of bishop c7 weird move or whatever it is. But either way, knight c4, to my eyes, looked very strong, and she didn't play it. Instead, we have the position you see on the board now where black just played g6, and knight f5 is probably the next idea.
Maybe we'll see bishop d6 once again, as we saw in the previous game, because knight f5 looks a bit annoying. Maybe not so much, but still.
What about g4? Too risky?
Oh, Robert, g4. Oh, what a move.
Not my king safety. I don't need to worry about it.
I think g4 was a bit risky. Just a little bit.
True. I've been told that my whole life. Robert, stop trying to throw other people's kings in danger. Hey, it's fine. It's not my problem. But g4 is something that she will consider next, because now it actually gains a tempo, gains some space. Maybe it's not so bad.
Maybe it's not, but she can play g4 any moment. She can first try something like c3, maybe knight f1, and then g4, knight g3. This may be a plan.
So you're going for the maneuvering, just the build up in the position, whereas I'm just like, let's go g4 and break through.
Yes, I'm a good builder.
I'm not. I was always bad at that kind of stuff. So at least I have you here to help improve this position slowly but surely. And bishop d6 was played by Anna. She has less control over the board. She wants to trade some pieces. The bishop on e5 was a nuisance. And if that bishop is somehow kicked away, maybe black will have some knight f4 ideas, which is why you should not play g4 here, everybody. Don't play g4 because f4 will be permanently weak.
I think Alexandra is thinking now whether she should take on d6 or she should go for a builder plan. And she decided to play c3.
You have to take with a rook on e5. Otherwise, knight f4.
Rook e5. No blunders.
So what now? Queen to d7 makes sense to me. Knight back to d6. Maybe knight e to g7, possibly, just to trade some rooks off. What would you do here?
Knight g7. Knight g7. Maybe. Knight d6 was chosen by Anna. I slightly prefer white's position. I think this.
Are you saying that you like control over the game's only open file?
I like this control over the e-file. And when she played knight e3, queen e3, I was a little bit puzzled, but then I realized, okay, the queen is going to h6, maybe. And g4 was played.
So queen trying to go to h6, go for a checkmating attack. However, black has this f4 square under control. So you can't go queen f4 now because queen f4, this rook takes e6. Just going to show that real quick, where I remove the guard of your queen, and if you take my queen, my rook just comes back and takes. So you have to be careful before making moves of that nature. Knight f4 also is possibly. How about queen f4 now? What do you think?
Looks good. Maybe maybe white shouldn't trade the queens. Queen f4 was played, and
this is
now
starting to look good for black. I regret g4 ever happening.
yes, because g4 has a very serious drawback of weakening this important square on f4, where it will be occupied by the knight. I mean, if the knight is coming to f4, the knight will be super strong there.
Right. Attacks the h3 pawn, which wouldn't be a problem if the pawn were not on g4. And it also will try to go to the d3 square to go after the queenside pawn. So I actually like black's position now. Queen h4 played, I think that's a practical decision. But with the king coming up to g7, there's not really going to be an easy way to attack the king. And black's also up 20 seconds. I like her position.
Seems like black really improved its position, so it's looking good now. Queen g3 was played, so now white is like very afraid of what's happening. And okay, there's after g3, it's spoiling the structure, but now there is no knight on f4, and there will be no knight on f4 in this game. No n9.
It was really instructive, Anna, to show that white could have traded queens on f4 right away. But she said, I'm only going to trade queens in a way that benefits me. And so Alexandra says, my pawn structure doubled. Who cares? As long as this knight isn't getting into f4, where it's going to create some problems for me, that's the important thing. So I still think black is doing well here, right?
I think black doesn't have so many problems. a5, it's important because if it was white to move, then white would have played a5 from their side, and they will gain some space. So a5 is important. Now some rook trades are coming. Maybe not immediately rook e5, but I'm thinking about something like rook e6. Okay, I was thinking from black side. So maybe rook e7 now, rook e7, rook c8, protecting the knight, then trying to play king f8 or king f6.
Yeah, protect the knight first, as the rook on e7 is not pinned. The knight on f3 does defend this rook on e1. Sometimes you forget about that. You're like, oh, the rook can't move. There's another rook behind it that can capture. The knight protects it. So that's why rook c8 was played. And G5. I think I like that move, and now I'm looking at rook takes h takes G5, knight takes G5, rook takes E7. There's a fork with king F6 at the end, unless I'm wrong about that.
So was it a blunder or there is something we are missing? No, maybe we are missing that in the end. I mean, after king f6, there is rook d7 attacking the knight on d6.
Well, she decides to trade off all the rooks because she was afraid of a similar plan. The big plus for white is you've gotten rid of your double pawns and you have the potential to play g4, h4, h5 for an outside pass pawn on the king side. The bad news is black is playing very quickly on the queen side, and black's trying to do a similar thing of getting an outside pawn here. And this knight on d2 is doing a really good job, Anna, covering the c4 square and the e4 square. How serious are either side's chances in this endgame?
Looks like it's more or less equal, but it's not a dead draw.
Right. And what kind of winning plans would you say exist, say, for black? I'm looking at knight c4, and if you take on c4, I take with my d pawn, and I try to break a passed pawn on that side. It's very hard to visualize this, so hopefully we can see something like it, or I can go back and show it. But knight c4, take with the d pawn to really try to create an outside passed pawn. It's something that you don't really get to see every day.
And I'm thinking of some idea like knight a8, knight b6, and knight c4.
Ooh.
Trying to attack the b2 pawn, and then if you play even knight d3, there is still a sacrifice. I mean, after trading the knights, if you play knight d3, then there is still a sacrifice knight b2, what will be very unpleasant.
I like that. We're definitely going to show that no matter how this game concludes. That is a super, super instructive moment brought to you by Anna Muzichuk, excuse me. And I'm coming back to that. Thank you, Anna.
Yes, we already found two plans, but it seems like the girls are not going for any of them.
Well,
Well,
she might
yes,
play h5.
h5 is coming, so I don't like black playing so passively. Maybe.
I guess she can rely on knight e6 check and keep the king pushed back. But,
King e2, where is this king going?
To protect the pawn on b2 and the knight frees up? Guess so.
And knight c4, then king c2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But now white's knight can't really move because knight e3 check would be a thing. And here comes f5. Okay, outside pass pawn for white, but black's king can just go king f6, king g6, king h5. Oh, gosh. Who's better here? King f6, king f... I don't like that move. That's too soon.
f3 is a little bit too soon. Yeah, knight h2, attacking the pawn.
Ooh, knight e3
knight
played?
e3 instead. Can you take on d5?
She does.
Take, take, take. The king is coming.
Uh-oh. If you take on c4, you lose because this f pawn's too fast. So she plays knight f1. That's a good move. King h3, king g2. So d5, king g2. Oh, gosh. Is it winning for black?
d6? I think she should try to play d6.
Hey, king f1.
But, yeah, d7, 95. Nice trick.
Oh, my gosh. She played king e4. Take on f3. That's really smart. Here comes king e4 and king d4 D2. And king c5.
Wow. The way she saved this game is really amazing.
And I think she did it with half a second left, too. Wow. Okay, this is the final game of the 5+1. Alexandra just shook her head. She clearly is just like, how did that happen? Anna grabs, her eyes, like, what can I do? What more can I do to win a game? Let us go back first to the moment way back when that Anna, you pointed out, where knight a8. I really like that move that you were suggesting. And the point that I'm going to illustrate here is that Anna was pointing out is, let's say the white king sort of does its forward job here, and the knight comes to c4. You take, knight d3. This loses for white. It's a very known pattern because of knight takes b2. Knights are terrible on b2 because a3 happens, and you can't stop my pawn from promoting. Like, that's just what you were looking at. And so knight a8, knight b6, I think was a really smart try.
And now, please, Robert's try with knight c4, d takes c4, and breakthrough of b4.
I don't think that would have worked out so well, but my point was that I was going to take with the d pawn, bring my knight to d5, and let's say I play b4. whatever. The point is, I'm going to play b4 and then play c3 at some point where I push my pawn to a3 and a2. It doesn't actually pan out the way that Anna's did, but there's sometimes where you sacrifice a couple pawns to spring free an outside pass pawn. And finally, last but certainly not least, what happened in this game was crazy. And this moment here where the king came into g2, she made this move with 0.5 seconds left, king to e4. That's how much time she had. 0.5 seconds.
Did Anna really did Anna really had to take on f1, or she could play f2?
F2 looks winning.
F2 is winning, yes, but she was also down to 5 seconds and she didn't have much time to calculate all the consequences. Yeah, F2 looks winning.
It's winning because you're going to take this knight next move no matter what, and then you're getting a queen. And taking first allowed white to steal your passed pawn and then quickly bring her king right over to take black's remaining pawn. A lone knight cannot beat a king. That means the game ends in a draw. Anna, we've been doing this for now 90 plus minutes. We're going to take our break in this FIDE Chess.com Women's Speed Chess Championship Superfinal. We'll be back shortly, everybody.
See you soon.
And we return getting ready for the 3 minute plus 1 second time control of this Women's Speeches Championship Super Final. Anna, we've had a thrilling match already. What do you think that your compatriot, Anna Ushenina, needs to do in order to come back from this 2-game deficit?
I think she's playing well, but when it comes to 10 seconds, she's losing the control, so she shouldn't allow that. I think she should play just a little bit quicker, just 10 seconds quicker, and that would really change a lot.
I agree completely. And I have up on screen the game with the 4 queens that resulted in a checkmate like this. But earlier in the game, it was a really crazy one. I mean, just I still can't get over that there are 4 queens and we were struggling to find the checkmate. But earlier we liked Black's position because she was up a pawn and her queen was centralized. Everything was looking good for her. And these are the type of games that she will need to convert if she's going to beat a player as strong as Alexandra Kosteniuk, because she's not going to go down without fighting any single game. Alexandra is very resourceful. She fights until the very end. And speaking of fighting to the very end, I see that the games have started and it's 5.5, 3.5, and we are going to get a London system. Oh, we don't.
Yes, we have the game already.
We do.
The game has started. Some new opening.
And E4, please. Play in the center, right? Here it is.
Sharp lines.
And white gives up the bishop pair, but has a big center. So would you prefer in a blitz game to have the pair of bishops or the nice center and easy development?
I'd prefer to have a better position. And whatever that means.
Well, what does that mean to you?
Speaking about this position, I'd prefer to have the center because I really like these central pawns. Also, white is ahead in the development. Seems like a good position for white, just c3. Okay, 4 is also a nice plan. But in general, the general plan can be something like playing c3, rook e1, placing the queen on c2, maybe e5 someday, maybe today.
Maybe today, not quite sure. It is International Chess Day, so we should see good chess moves like e5. But what I was going to say is that black has a hard time coming up with counterplay. There are no weaknesses in white's position, and white has more space. White has a beautiful center. She does play e5, and now it's not a weakness, but there is the potential where there's a crack on e5, and black can strike back and have some more space for her pieces.
So d takes e5 was the threat. That's why Anna decided to play bishop e4. I don't really think she should trade these bishops. Not like it's a bad option. Maybe it's even a good move, but I would have waited with this bishop e4 move. Maybe I would have played queen e2 or rook e1, though bishop e4 is also okay. Just now retreating the bishop, blocking the b7 bishop. So that's what he wanted to get.
A French bishop in a way, right? And I think
your favorite opening. That's what I have learned.
My absolute favorite opening. The next, we need a Ukrainian opening. I don't think that exists, does it?
There is a Ukrainian line, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know my openings well enough, but I was going to say h4, h5 feels like a plan for white. But with the knight on f8, even if black is forced to play g5, there's no checkmate because the knight is very good covering the h7 square. So is black at some point going to try for f6? It's a French, right? Looks like a French.
Yes, but with the bishop on g7. Okay.
I don't like black's position.
h5, g5, and now, knight h2. I really like the small knight is coming to g4. Really nice place for the knight. And then the plan may be to break with f4.
Exactly.
Something like queen d2 and f4 may look very unpleasant.
Very good, though, by Alexandra to put queen on b4, because you were just saying queen d2, pawn f4. That was a great try. Here, queen to b4 puts pressure on b2. You can't take on d4 just yet. I'll show why. Let's say I play b3. Queen takes d4 is a blunder because bishop h7 check gets the bishop out the way with a tempo, and I win your queen. So
you like the tricks so much, Robert.
I do.
All the possible tricks.
I have to show them. I don't want people to be blundering their queens. The pawn on d4 essentially is not under attack just yet. That's the point. So rook a3 might be a move for white to try to play rook b3. That looks pretty interesting.
But what about the pawn on b2? Is it actually the threat?
Yeah,
Just
maybe.
black one to take on b2? I don't think so, because if black takes on b2, then rook b1 will be played, and then the rook is coming to b6. And yeah, this trading of the pawns is just like in white's favor.
That's true. And you know what else is in white's favor? Eventually, knight f6 check will be. Playing f4 should be. But I like what Alexandra's doing. Her position is not good. I don't like it. But I think she's making the best out of a bad situation. And here we see that Anna plays rook to a3, but rook b3 is not really too much of a threat. I think she eventually wants to move. Now rook b3 is a threat.
I really liked rook a3. I think it was a very powerful move. Just rook a3, rook b3, this maneuver looked very nice. And knight c3, at this moment, it's trapping the queen, but okay, black can still play rook c3. So it was just the win of an exchange. Maybe it was better to play knight c3.
Should play it now.
But now there's queen a3.
Then I'll go knight to b5. And it may not win material right away, but I think positionally it's just crushing.
Queen e7, only move. Is it? Yes, I think it is.
It is.
Queen d2.
Here comes f4. I did like knight to b5, but it's okay. This also looks really good. Maybe she'll play bishop b5 at some point, just control all the light squares with her knights.
Will we see f4 on the next move? No.
Nope. And we said no because then you would take on d4 with check if the pawn were not on f2. But f4 is the move you want to play. She does play bishop b5. She wants to put her knight on b5. She wants to play f4. Black can hardly do anything. The bishop on g7 is a big pawn there. The knight on f8 not helping out really. This is as one-sided of a position as you could ask for.
Black is trying to double the rooks on the c file, but okay, f4. Finally, f4 was played. Rook f1.
I like that move on h7. It was necessary, but still a good move. And rook c4, trying to go after the a4 pawn. Alexandra really has done a good job of creating counterplay, and I'm worried that this position could collapse for white if you're not careful. So rook c3. Okay, good.
What will happen after rook a4? Rook c8.
Woo! And I sneezed in the truth there. Knight takes h6 check. Maybe. Then king g7. Oh, it's too complicated.
Queen d3.
Okay.
Wow.
So knight h6 check.
f5 or
F5
something of this kind. Or knight h6.
Oh, wait, knight f6 check. Ooh.
Rook f8. Knight h6.
Yeah, and I don't like this move order.
F takes g5.
Queen f3. Yeah, okay, this works.
Threaten queen f7 mate or queen f6, but queen f7 is more epic.
But it's not mate on f7.
Queen f7 wasn't the mate. I thought it was the mate, but maybe it wasn't the mate.
Actually, it might have been. Well, I want to show that. Yeah. I think that was checkmate, and because you came up with a crazy tactic, that no, it doesn't work. But the point was that queen takes, king h8, check, king g7, rook here, king g6. Oh wait, that is mate. Yeah, you're right.
Rook b1, king h2, but still, yeah.
Yeah, you found the mate. I'm with you, Anna. I
found the mate in the most complicated way. I mean, Anna did it in a much easier way.
Yeah, but your way was cooler, so I wanted to show it, and now everyone got to see it. And
so yeah, let's go back to the game.
But don't play rook e3. Yeah, there we go. She went rook e2 this time. She learned her lesson.
You're relieved now. Rook e2 is much better. Rook e2 and bishop takes d6. But now rook e3. She really liked her rook on e3, but she didn't allow knight c4.
Yeah, she wants to put her queen. It's going to be a queen sandwich on the e file with queen to e2, putting all the pressure down the file, though the black knight can come to e6 and shut it down. So it's not that easy to accomplish. Knight e5.
Knight g6 we saw in the previous version. But bishop f6 now.
So do I want to allow you to take on e5 like that happened in the other game? She says, all right, sure. c4. If you take on e5, I take with the pawn, and then I'll leave you with an isolated d pawn. Oh,
D takes e5.
definitely. Wait, this doesn't look very good for black in my
I
opinion.
didn't like bishop e5. Yes.
Just take on d5, and then knight to d4, and then knight. Oh, I like knight d4 coming to f5. Just like bring that knight in either to d6 or to attack on g7. f4 also looks very good to play for f5. But I like the knight d4 first.
But now you can't go knight d4 and knight f5.
You're absolutely right. So rook to d8 for black. And queen a4 actually was also an interesting move, hitting a2 and f4.
Wow, how did you see that?
I used my 4 eyes that I have, and then I saw that the queen could move diagonally, and with 96, queen a4, then f5, and then knight f4, and it's 92 check. Queen a4 works. Like queen a4.
Queen a4, but it's like on the other side of the board.
Hey, you see what happened?
I think Anna is listening to you.
I
Because
don't
it's
think
not
she
easy to
is.
see it. To see such a move, it's not easy.
I think white should play rook h4.
Or rook f1.
Rook
Followed
f1
by
off.
queen h4. I want to place my queen on h4.
That makes sense to go for checkmate.
Also, rook f1 with she went queen h4 immediately. h5.
Mm-hmm.
This position is a bit dangerous for black. I didn't want to go queen h4 first because I wanted to keep the f5 idea. So I wanted to go rook f1 first. But Alexandra preferred queen h4 and rook f3. So she wanted to keep the rook on d1. Okay.
So knight g7 to f5 is somewhat tempting here to reposition the knight. Queen takes a2. You have to consider it, but I see f5 and I just run away scared. She plays knight to g7.
Yes, I mean, queen a2 f5 was super scary.
And you know what move is catching my e6 here? I don't know if it works, but you can't take with a rook on e6. And I don't want your knight to get to f5. But okay, she plays much more sensibly with a3, not giving up a pawn. Knight f5 now played. And queen f6 is possible because you can't play rook e6. The rook on d8 is hanging. She plays queen g5, which is smart. Now e6 is a threat.
We can play queen d7, but it's quite passive. D4, yep. I thought about this move.
E6. She had e6. Maybe it's not the end of the world, but e6 is the first move on my mind.
I like your e6. I mean, e6 was a good suggestion.
Well, rook takes h5 can't even be played because the knight on b3 is hanging. So
what to do? d3?
d3. Like
rook takes d3, rook d3, rook d3, and then queen c4 or queen e4.
Yeah, queen e4. Ooh, wait, this actually doesn't it just
because
work?
I mean the queen on g5 is a bit out of play. Yes, Anna went for it.
It's just winning. She's threatening the rook on d3 and throwing queen e1 checkmate. And if you go rook d1, this queen e3 check, picking up the knight on b3. So this is just winning on the spot.
Nice tactics.
Yeah, this game looked really good for white out of the opening, and then a few imprecise moves, and it turned around.
Yes, impressive game by Anna, and she leveled the score. So it's completely unclear. It's getting tougher and tougher for both of the players. And Anna is changing the line. Or no, it's Alexandra who is changing the line, because in the previous games, she didn't play d5.
No, she didn't. She played a lot of b6 stuff and different variations. Now she's into a Caro Kann. You're like, wait, what? Wasn't d4 in the first move? But it's like an exchange Caro Kann where white plays e4 takes d5 and black plays c6 takes d5, even though that's not how this happened. So interesting dynamic this far. Interesting that she decided to change her opening and isolated queen pawn. I know after yesterday how you feel about that, but here I feel like white is moving quite quickly and should castle, take back on c4, and put some pressure on black's position.
95, queen b6. I guess, no, I didn't guess it's right. I didn't expect queen a4. I thought about bishop c6, b takes c6, knight c4, some less complicated line, but queen a4, wait, there is a lot of pressure on the knight on c6. So can I mean, no. Rook c8 can't really be played. a6 is the correct move, attacking the bishop.
So you have to do something, but that bishop takes c6, b takes c6. I can take on c4, but there's queen b4
Queen
check if I
b5.
take with the d2 knight. So maybe castle first. And queen b5, though.
Not easy.
Not even a little bit. No, it's very complex position here. Maybe just take on c4. Maybe knight d2 takes c4 and just trade queens. Okay.
But she went for a castle.
Wait. The match score, is that right? Anna's won 2 games in a row. I looked at the match score and it's 5.5, 5.5, and I should have made a bigger deal about it, but I've been so focused on the chess moves that I haven't looked. It is a tied match.
Yeah, it's a very close match. In the beginning, Alexandra was leading, but then Anna, she won the last 2 games.
Oh, somebody should have told me. I just looked.
I told you that Anna leveled the score.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. I've been so focused on the moves and not focused on the score. And knight d6 check.
Okay, she has queen b5 in between. I was afraid
Yes.
she was missing something, but not.
We have a tied match, everybody. I feel like a different man now that I've seen that. And the dark squares are under Anna's control. The light squares are under Alexandra's control. Which color complex is more important to this game, do you think?
I prefer black because we can just play rook a7, rook a8, attacking the a2 pawn. Also, the pawn on d4 is potentially weak.
So knight b4 hits a2 and knight c2 does both at the same time.
Knight c2, rook d1.
And then I'll play b4.
And then bishop d3.
Ooh, Anna with the tactics. So knight c2, rook a to rook a d1 to protect d4. This is going to be pinned. Bishop d3 says, "Thank you for your rook on f1. It's trapped."
Instead, knight d3 was played, attacking the b2 pawn. And not so bad. So because the move like b3 or b4, it's not actually the move white wants to make, but the knight on d3 is a bit awkwardly placed.
I like it.
Trapped. It's like trapped already, but no one can attack it. No piece.
And also, by playing b3, white took that square from her knight. Knight b3 to c5 was something I was looking at a long time ago. Now that seems like a pipe dream. And so rook a6, rook a8, things like that. You talked about doubling up against this a3 pawn. She plays rook a7 instead. And next move, rook to a8. Looks really good for black.
It seems like black is winning this pawn because I don't see the way how to defend it. Rook a8 now.
And black will win a pawn, but on an opposite color bishop. So how do you rate white's chances here? I think black has huge winning chances and is much, much, much better. But with opposite colored bishops, does that give white some real chances here?
I'm trying to save this pawn. I'm thinking about the move like rook fb1, and then if you take on a4, I come with rook to b7. But Anna preferred rook fd1, so what does she have in mind?
This pawn is pinned, can't move. Knight c2, bishop c2, both threats. Bishop c2 now looks really strong. Okay, take first and then bishop c2. But you just restrict all of white's pieces. The rook has to go back to f1. It can't even go e1. So bishop c2, rook e1, there's knight to d3. So she's ignoring me. She's like,
she's ignoring you, but I don't think it was right because now the knight is coming to c5 and the knight on c5 will have a very good place. It's a very nice outpost. She shouldn't have allowed it. She should have played bishop c2, right?
Both players now under a minute and black ahead by about 6-7 seconds. It's so much easier to play this as black though. Like white's just moving around aimlessly trying to bishop d6 check.
Bishop
not so
d6, yes.
Okay, I take it back. Not so aimless.
Tricky move.
That knight went from d2 to b7. If you played bishop c2, the knight couldn't get out. So what do you do here actually?
Rook a7. So that if I give this knight, then I take another one.
King c8.
King c8. Such a shaky move, but bishop d6 anyway, and bishop f8. It's like a serious counterplay.
Bishop Whoa. D6. I wasn't even thinking about bishop f8, but I like it now that you mentioned it. Here it is. So knight c2, then your bishop f8 move is annoying.
But putting the king on c8 under the rook on c1, you have to be very brave to do that.
You're also walking to a checkmating net, right? Like if somehow this rook can land on the 8th rank, your king is checkmated. So you're right. You have to be brave, and she still should be better. Oh, well, e6 is under attack. Not really. King can go to d7. The knight on d5 is really good. So knight b4 played. Now knight c2. Rook e to d1. How about rook a1 there? How do you feel about trading? Oh, what? That's a rook. And then rook a1. It's a full rook. It's not even a rook a. Rook a1 was good there.
Why didn't she check and take the bishop on f5? Okay, they have only 15 seconds. She's just taking the pawns.
It's 4 pawns for a rook, but the king on h2 is in big trouble. So that's the worst part about this, is not just the material, which is actually pretty close to being even by material standards. Bishop e5, the king comes to g3.
Mate was threatening.
Rook a2. Go after the g2 pawn.
What a crazy game. Knight f5 and knight e3.
Oh, probably only way to do this. Knight e3, bishop takes f3. She doesn't take it. She probably didn't like her winning chances at that point, but this game is wild. Okay, black is still much better here.
Rook c7 was a threat.
That would have turned the game around completely. Oh,
f2. Okay.
Wait, what is this setup of pieces here? Rook.
Crazy game.
I can't even calculate quickly. I'm like, my head hurts just trying to figure this out. Wait, the d4 pawn was hanging, which brings the king back to stop the pawn. I think that's smart. Bishop back to f1. She was bishop d5, all right?
h6.
Oh my gosh. Rook b7. I'm like wondering if you can trade rooks and make a draw because you have so many pawns, but it's probably smarter to keep the rooks on the board for all these checks.
Rook g8.
Now rook b1.
We have already seen the game with 4 queens, and now it's some
crazy. Black lost in time.
Oh, really? Oh.
Oh my gosh.
It will be difficult to handle that. Yes, losing 3 games in a row.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that hurts.
I feel sorry for Alexandra in this game because she was playing it very well in the beginning. And then it was a very complex game. But that happens.
Wow. And we still have 38 minutes left of the 3+1. So unlike the Grand Prix stages of the WSCC, there is a lot of time remaining. And that could be bad news for Alexandra to some extent, because yes, it gives her more time to come back, but she's sort of on tilt potentially after a 3rd straight defeat.
I think sometimes you need at least like 1 minute, to calm yourself down and to think what has happened, or not to think what has happened, just to forget about it. But when the next game starts immediately, you don't have time for that. And psychologically, it's not so easy.
It isn't. And I was always taught growing up that if you lose a bunch of games in a row, you just need to make a draw to remind yourself that you are able to score some points. So, just making a draw could be a good result for her. She changed her line back again. So she went c4 in the earlier game, which looked like a great position for her. Now she has traded the queens off, and she's going to play this end game where, to my eyes, black isn't really doing badly at all. However, there are some tough questions. Like here, rook c8 was played because she played c5. The knight would have come to b5. And now e6 is the first move that comes to my mind. She plays f4 instead. Instead of forcing pieces off, she just gains space.
Maybe she's actually trying to make a draw because she's playing in a very safe way. And the strategy of making a draw after you lost a couple of games is a good strategy. I would also try to make it. Another question is that, in the blitz games, it's really, it's actually difficult to make a draw because, you don't have so much time. And even if you play some calm moves, it doesn't guarantee you it will be a draw. So very tough game, very tough match.
Indeed, it is. And I'm just trying to figure out what these rooks are doing on e3 and g3, because I thought she was going to do this, but can't black just put a rook on h6 and say, you're attacking me, but so what? You're not actually able to win these pawns.
I don't see how to make progress. Maybe to play h3, g4, and f5.
Okay,
Some kind of.
that's logical. It's definitely logical. And but black can just maybe you're right. Maybe g4 f5 is scarier than I initially thought. So what should black do now? Because d4, can I just try to push my pawns forward? She plays rook h4 instead. I don't know. I would play d4 for black, but I'm also getting a little impatient.
Don't be nervous.
I'm not nervous.
I'm nervous for you.
I just want to play the move d4 and push my pawns down the board. I feel like that's the right strategy. You have an extra pawn on the d file, so there's d4.
So what happens if white goes f5 now? It's something crazy again. It started in a very peaceful way, but now it's something crazy again.
Yes, because the king is actually being opened up on f7, and if e takes f5, probably rook f takes f5, king to e6, right? Like the king is going out into the center. She plays rook to c7. She wants to protect this pawn with g7. Seems pretty reasonable. And what now? I can go rook f3 to g3 to put pressure on the pawn. That looks pretty good.
Then rook h7 will come.
And then I say, ha, I made you move backwards. That's good for me, even though it's not that big a deal. Whoa.
f6. f6, I saw this move, but I didn't know what to do after g6. White can still play rook f2 g3, and then rook h6.
You know what I can play instead of rook h6? I can play rook c5. Because if you take me on g6, I take on e5. So rook c5 here. You need
h5?
Then I take on h5 with my rook.
Let me think.
I think king f3, king e4 is really, she plays h5, but rook takes h5.
Rook takes h5, maybe rook takes h5, d takes h5, rook g7, then rook g5 back. And if I manage to bring my king to e4, I would have a nice position, but do I have time for that? Rook g5?
Or you're asking for a lot. Your rook to g5, your king to e4. Anything else that...
Take the pawn on d4, take the pawn on h5.
Seems reasonable. But king f3,
rook d5, yes.
So king f2, got it. That's really smart. I'm glad you said. I was trying to figure out if king f3 or king f2 is better. King f2 is certainly better because king f3 there was rook d5 and the king could not blockade the pawn. Now if rook d5, the king can just go to e1 into d2.
So what about now? Should we play rook d5 and then try to put the pawn on d2 and then run with the h pawn, or I prefer to play h3 immediately? Rook d5, king d2, and h2 after that, or something like that.
Does white have some kind of like rook h8 check, rook h7 check sort of drawing mechanism? Like rook h7,
king g8,
and then I think they may make a draw here.
It's because if the king goes to g8, you have f7, or you have rook g7, or there are many moves. I don't know, but draw was agreed.
I think both players were nervous there, and that's a good result for Alexandra because she was down a pawn in the endgame, and she was so clearly playing for a result, for a victory, that I think she lost some of her objective sense of the position. So here she gets the black pieces again. We have a London system. This is Anna's bread and butter. She used it throughout the WSCC, and these lines here, very solid for white, and black will frustrate herself trying to play for an initiative.
Yes, I realized that in a women's tournament, girls are always, I mean, not always, but very often going for this line. Maybe it's because, easy to play with white, just knight e5, f4. Typical plan, very clear one.
I mean, there are many players who do this, right? Gatakomsky has long played the London system. Magnus will play it in blitz games quite regularly. It's because the moves are very natural from white's perspective, although now Anna's spending some serious time here, and 95 is new 97. And the point of knight e7 is you didn't want to trade on e5 because the d pawn would take and start hitting black's pieces. So you want to bring this knight to f5 and then your other knight to e4. So you've opened up your bishop on b7.
And then go for f6.
Yeah.
So this knight will not stay on e5 forever.
Not forever, no. Sadly,
Not.
for that knight. It would love to say that forever, but doesn't have all day.
a5. Was it because white wanted to play bishop a6, or it's because of some other reason?
To gain space, maybe to prepare c4, b5, b4, things like that. But you're asking the right questions. And bishop a6, if the bishop moves away from d3, will be played. And now knight g6, but now you can take on g6 with
knight or bishop?
Knight. And then play f4.
Knight and f4. Nice plan.
Or e4, actually. I like e4.
I like f4.
Oh, now we're disagreeing. So which will we see, f4 or e4? Whoa.
We saw f takes g6.
Okay, wasn't expecting that. And now I'm more likely to expect e4.
Yes, because the pawn on e6 is a bit weak. Kind of a bit weak.
Bishop e7. What a calm move.
What will happen now? It takes d5, rook e1, or d takes c5, or e5. So many possibilities.
Yeah, like d takes c5 played. And
so don't play bishop takes c5 because e5 will be bad. But b takes c5 is
I don't
good.
know, this is a French defense where the pawn's on g6 instead of f7. Like things just went from bad to worse. I called it a French defense, and then you have these double pawns, which means e6 is weak.
Yes, we are somehow seeing some similar French defense structures or something very, very likely.
Yeah, I'm not really liking this, but knight h5 is a good move, trying to get knight f4. It's the counterplay that black needs here, but take on e7, play g3. There it is, not allowing the knight in. The problem with g3 is that if this bishop opens up, it has a longer diagonal from b7. The good news, of course, is you take away this f4 square, which is the only reason the knight's on h5 in the first place.
Right, maybe to play e5 now, just cutting this knight on h5. Oh, after rook e1, we don't have this possibility anymore. I mean, we can still play e5, but the knight will not go to h5.
You know, I don't actually mind black's position so much anymore. Now that we're liquidating rook f7, trade queens this way, it feels like the worst is behind her. But I liked your move e5 a lot. That knight on h5 would have been trapped over there. It wouldn't have been possible to win the knight anytime soon, but the knight would have been restricted, and knights on the rim, as they say, are dim. So here, black pushes forward on the queen side. I kind of like black's position.
Something like bishop c6 and rook b8.
Going right for the b2 pawn. Yep.
c4 was... bishop c6 had this serious drawback that we can't play d4 now because the pawn on c5 is hanging. Knight d7.
Good move. Hitting
is
the
it okay
rook.
or not? I don't know. Rook e7 can be played, but is it dangerous or not?
Oh, is d4 the rook takes c6? Probably not.
Then we just trade everything.
Okay, well now d4 for sure. And the problem with playing d4 is if the light square bishop comes off, then it feels like there's some weak squares, but at the same time b2 is a target. So that's what I would go after if I were Alexandra.
Okay. Can we take on b3, or is knight b3 dangerous after that?
No, then you have bishop a4, I guess.
Yeah, but maybe black isn't in need of taking on b3 immediately. King f7.
Okay, trades. Now take on b3. I want to use the a file for my rooks. I don't want to sit and see what happens. I feel like white is great control over the e file, over the d file. The pawn on c5 can be a potential problem. And with both players at just around 40 seconds. It's going to be a time scramble.
Again,
as always.
Should white trade a rook or should white play rook a1? I wasn't sure.
Knight d7. Okay, so black's king is already in the center, but white's king at some point would love to dart to d5 and create some problems here. The d4 pawn is pretty good. It's protected by a pawn on c5. So what's
G5, I like the move. It was important in my opinion because otherwise white would have played f4. While now there's
hung a rook.
No. Yes. It was a blunder. Yeah. Serious blunder. Okay, Anna will resign.
Oh, and that's in some ways, I don't want to say a karmic balance or anything. This has been a very back and forth match. The dynamics in every single individual game have been extremely competitive. And Alexandra lost on time in a position where she had been up a rook for a while. And then in that position, I think that Anna was trying to press and she left her rook hanging. And that was a huge blunder.
That was very unexpected blunder because we didn't see so many blunders, did we see? I mean, we saw some mistakes, but not blunders. And I think this was a very important win for Alexandra.
She needed it, and she evens the score up. So now we see 7-7, where both players making some mistakes. And this is a long match. You have to feel for the players. They've already been competing now for what, 2 hours? Right?
Yes, already more than 2 hours, I think.
2.5 hours, really. So they have had a lot of chess behind them. 14 games. And the hardest part about that is every single game, you're juggling these different variations, the tactics, the different strategic elements, and it gets exhausting. So I want to give a shout out to the players as they have 24 minutes and change in the 3+1 segment before they get to the bullet. I've been very impressed with their play, and I have no idea who's going to win this match at this point.
And Alexandra switched to the first move, d4. It's the first time she played d4. In all her previous games, she started with e4. So it's going to be something interesting.
And we have an isolated pawn for white, but we have this bishop on b1 staring at the black king. And black has blockaded the pawn really well. So I tend to like these positions for black at this point. Although I'm looking at rook a3, jumping this rook all the way over to the king side and hoping that that should give some kind of counterplay. And there's rook a3.
Alexandra heard your advice. She did play rook a3.
I think it's a smart move. It's if knight comes to d5, you can trade on d5 and bring your rook to g3. And you need to play actively for white because the pawn on d4 is a weakness. It's a target. It cannot be protected by another pawn. So you need to work quickly.
And it's always the question if black should defend with moving g6 or h6 if, I mean, one more piece attacks the h7 pawn. But, well, we are a little bit too far from that.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, took with a bishop because if you took with a knight, then white could play d5. Whenever you have an isolated pawn, you always think, can I push the pawn? And that's why black has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces saying, no, you're not playing d5.
So finally, the rook has come to h3, and it's a bit dangerous because g6 was not possible because of queen h6, h6. You still have to calculate rook h6 sacrifice. Does it work? Rook h6, g takes h6, queen takes h6.
Yes.
Oh, there is f5. Okay.
But it's at least a draw for white. Right? Like just queen g6 check, back and forth.
But do you have more?
I don't know, but I'm looking at it. And so what I would do if I were Alexandra is I would store that draw in my back pocket and then calculate for more. She played rook g3, queen h4 played quite quickly by Anna here, protecting h6, which is important because the g7 pawn was pinned. In came knight f4, and where's that knight going?
Big question. Where is this knight going?
Rook
Maybe
e5?
It's going to be sacrificed some way.
I'm like looking at rook e5, knight h5. She plays h3 to go rook g4 and knight h5. So she's going for the attack.
H3 is a good move, yes. Yeah. Rook g4, and then if the queen goes somewhere, then knight is coming to h5. It's a very dangerous position for black. Very, very dangerous. It really is.
What? Taking that pawn?
Oh, well, but what to do?
That pawn looked irrelevant, though. I can't imagine this is going to work out. Queen takes h6, rook takes g7. I mean, this looks like a very whew.
g5. I mean, it's just okay. It was the only move, so we shouldn't be too much surprised. But
f5. There's
not
bishop takes f5,
pleasant.
right?
Not pleasant plate.
f5 would be a good defensive move because sometimes the best defense is being offensive, but bishop takes f5 works because the queen is under attack behind the e6 pawn. So rook comes to d5, and what now? That's a good move.
Bishop e4.
Bishop
Attacking the
e4.
rook.
Knight f4 was
Knight
played
f4.
instead.
Or rook b5.
Rook b5. The pieces are so clumsy that maybe d5 or something like that.
Maybe bishop g6.
Bishop g6. Anna, you're
It's not my
sacrificing
piece.
pieces. Oh wait, rook takes e6. Rook takes e6 was there. This also is good though. Probably just completely winning. Oh my gosh, Alexandra comes back with an oomph. You know, she was struggling there. She was down in the match, and now she's looking like she is on her way to winning a second consecutive game.
This was a very good attack by Alexandra. I really like the plan pointed by you and made by Alexandra, this rook a3 and rook h3 transfer. A typical transfer of the rook, but I mean, not an obvious one. And Alexandra wins the game, and with winning this game, she's leading. Yes, she's leading 8-7. So now it's Anna Ushenina who is in unpleasant position because she lost the last two games.
Wow, I mean, what a match this has been. I am so happy that we have a back and forth match. It's a lot of fun for me as a commentator, and just to see these players, they really do have different styles. And right now, it once again favors Alexandra. It had been favoring Anna for the first half of these 3+1 portion as Anna entered down 2 games. Then she even took a 1 game lead. And now we see this position once more, Anna, where there's these double C pawns, no longer doubled because one of them was stolen, and split pawns on the queen side for black, but the bishop pair. So I feel like black should be okay here.
Yeah, this match is a little bit like a roller coaster because one girl is leading, then the other one is winning a couple of games, then the other one is winning. But I also like this match a lot because it's very exciting and it's very unpredictable. Now anyone can say who will win this game and who will win this match.
Yeah, I don't know. And bishop e7 played by Alexandra just now. White thinking, do I put a rook on c1? Do I play g4? No, she's not thinking about g4. She puts the rook on c1. I just had to say g4 because I know how many times you've scolded me, Robert. Why you keep talking about g4? No, that's not happening. There's no reason that White would ever play this move. You can do it and not lose material, but it just doesn't make sense.
I think that playing g4 it's not actually Anna's style. If it was Alexandra who was white, then she would think about this move. But Anna, I don't believe in g4. Seeing g4 from Anna, she's yeah, she's a very strategical player. She prefers to make it without playing g4.
And she can play knight c6 here. That bishop on e7 is nowhere to go. White is taking up some very important space in this position. Looks pretty reasonable. I'm also looking at the move queen to d3, which would have encouraged a queen trade. Instead, knight c6 was played, the first option. But I actually kind of like queen d3 as well. Both look good. The knight on f6 is nowhere to go because the pawn on f3 is taking away all of the forward squares.
The knight on c6 is placed very well. b4 and b5, that's what I wanted to say. And now the knight on c6 will be very strong. b5?
And she wants to play, Alexandra does, knight b6 to c4. So the knight on f6 was not doing anything. We were a little critical of it. So she said,
wait, is it the queen trap? Knight a5, queen b6, bishop c7?
Oh
Where can it
my
go? Oh, no.
gosh. Knight a5, queen b6 only move, bishop c7. Resigns in the spot.
And Alexander resigned, yeah.
Oh my
But
gosh.
even if not about the queen trap, I think black's position was already unpleasant. It's not easy to play it.
No, it wasn't. I'm just going to show that queen b6, bishop c7. The queen has nowhere to go. It's under attack. All of the squares that would be available to it are under white's control. So the queen is lost there. Wow. Let's move on to the next game. And what do we have here? Oh, different position. First time we've seen this Vienna variation. And you could take on e4 and steal a pawn. But white has sacrificed a pawn for the very quick development. Look at how many pieces white has developed. 3 minors, already castled. These lines can be very scary for black.
But once again, it's like Alexandra is ready to play any opening. She's prepared so many lines for today. Queen a4 and knight e5. It's still the theory.
It is. And the rook came to b8 to protect the bishop on b4. So after knight takes c6, you just take back with the pawn, and you're not hanging your bishop on b4. Just to keep that in mind. And bishop g5. So black can castle now. I would be a little worried just about piling up pressure with knight to e4 and all this good stuff. But you do need to get your king out of the center at some point.
So is Anna thinking about queen takes d4? Well, she preferred not to take it, yes.
You're the one who told me. She's not that kind of player, right? She's very principled and solid, not going to risk it by taking the pawn on d4.
She can take the pawns. Sometimes if the pawns are hanging and she thinks it's good, she's taking the pawns, but she prefers to play solid in general.
And the problem I would say about this position is it's too solid, where black has an extra pawn, but really not that much space. And queen takes c6 would steal that pawn right back. And you know that Alexander's looking at that move, saying, all right, let's get that material equality. And then this bishop can go to b7 for black. It at least is looking better. I think you can take this pawn, though. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Fabiano and Magnus had a couple of games in this variation.
You mean exactly this position or in this variation in general? Because I don't
know
believe they had this position, exactly this one.
I don't know if it's exactly this position, but I certainly remember it being very similar to this.
Yes. So Alexandra is actually taking a lot of time.
She is.
Now she did play knight e4, yes.
So is Anna. They're both trying to figure out this position. It seems like they're in unfamiliar territory. And taking on f6, and bishop takes back, and trading everything. So if the queen takes on f6, after queen takes c6, the c7 pawn is also hanging in some lines.
The b2 pawn is also hanging.
Oh, true. I forgot about that. That's a pawn you probably want to keep. And it's no longer hanging because it's gone.
Easier for us, yes. So queen c7, bishop b3.
Oh, that's a great move. Wow.
She's trying to trap the rook with queen c3.
And the bishop can't get out from c8, right? The bishop no longer has b7. It can't go to d7. Queen c3 just traps the rook. See that? The pawn wasn't really hanging. I knew it. No, I just honestly didn't see it.
You felt that.
No, I didn't see it at all. Queen c1. Oh my gosh, queen c1 smart. If queen c3, there's queen a3. Now if queen a3, there's rook d2, and the rook is pinned to the queen on a3.
And if rook e2. Okay, rook e2.
Bishop
c4, rook
the rook
e4.
goes to e4 and rook to h4. The rook is surviving.
This rook has a difficult fate, but it's fighting.
Actually, I think it's just surviving now. So maybe queen c1 was imprecise. Maybe rook f to e1 first or something was. It's a tricky position. So bishop d3, rook h4. I actually don't think that black is doing too badly here.
I don't know. Oh, okay. What's happening?
I think black is fine.
Look at the maneuver of this rook. Wow.
It was brilliant. She saw it the whole time, Anna. She knew that her rook was not getting trapped from the very beginning. No, she just found her way out of it. Queen d6. Queen d6.
Once again, rook d4 is not possible because of the bishop h7 trick.
Mm-hmm. I like that move f4. Great move.
Rook h5 and rook a5.
Okay. Yeah, this is a problem.
I think this rook will make this game.
How many times this rook moves?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I guess.
Wow, that was really quick counting. How did you do that?
I just guessed. No, I tried to calculate.
Okay, and the bishops are coming off now. And the thing about rook end games is one pawn on the same side of the board. There are many different positions where it's not enough for a win, even though you're better. So that's what Alexandra is going to hope for. That's get like rook and 4 against rook and 3, something like that. And she played rook c1. I thought she would have played d5 there, and she could still play d5. I would really consider that move. It kind of hurts
No
Black's
one
pawn
wants to
structure.
go for d5. No one.
Yeah, no, neither player wants to play it, but it's what I would have certainly looked at. Maybe king. Okay.
King f3.
So this is the 4-on-3 I was talking about. If Black gives up the b5 pawn to win the d4 pawn, that is a theoretically drawn position. So Black will try to keep on control of her b5 pawn.
D5 is a smart move because you have to trade the pawns.
Yes, because
The
rook
more,
d2, there's rook d8 check.
yes, the more of them you will trade, the higher chances are to save the game. Yeah, rook d8, very important. D6.
d6 and then rook b8.
And then we'll have this 4 versus 3 after rook b8.
Mm-hmm.
On one side, rook b8, rook d6, rook b4, and they will play another 5 minutes, I believe.
5, maybe 20. No, you're right. And actually, this endgame is not that easy to hold. Kasparov lost the game against Jeroen Piquet, or Piquet. I don't know how to pronounce his name properly. My apologies to the legendary Dutch grandmaster, but he won a rook and 4 versus rook and 3 against Kasparov. So if Kasparov can lose it, anyone can lose it. And okay, watch out. King f5, king g4, king f3 at some point is what Black is looking for.
I think Black made huge progress with placing this pawn on h3 and cutting the king on the last.
The only problem though is that the king on f6 can't go forward because you lose the f7 pawn. Maybe you can. You just give up the pawn and bring the king in, but she goes e5. No, after e5 this feels.
I thought about g5. g5, king g6. I mean, just giving this pawn, but
Yeah, this is probably now
this is probably a
easier to
draw
hold.
already. Yes. Rook b4.
Yeah, rook f2 check.
King e6.
King f3. There's rook a2 or something. Yeah. Okay.
Though it's not easy to play for white. I mean, king g5, king h5.
Yeah.
King h5 and g5. Something.
So rook f2 covering the check. That's probably smart.
Oh, there was rook b3 and the rook b2.
Oh. But sometimes those endgames are still drawn, even though you're down, you're up a pawn. Weirdly, right? Because of the configuration, though that was a very good attempt. So, I mean, g5, g4 is mate. g5, g4, rook e4 mate.
Rook e4, yes.
It's checkmate. She walked into it.
It was very difficult to hold it. Maybe it was a draw, theoretically speaking, but it was very difficult to play it. I mean, if the pawn wasn't on h3 and if it was not causing too many problems, then draw would be quite easy to make. But with the pawn on h3, it was a big problem.
It was for many reasons. It cemented the pawn on h2. It allowed some kind of rook g1, rook g2 type of ideas in a different variation. And it also allowed the checkmating attack to happen because the king could not retreat to g2. So now we have this position for the third or fourth time. And I kind of have thought that Black is doing pretty decently throughout these lines. But then we saw Anna win that last game with White when she trapped Alexandra's queen. So we have to see something different here from Alexandra. And what will that be?
But in fact, it was Anna who first deviated from the line and she played a4. I don't know why she didn't take on c6 because it looked like a good option in the previous games. But she tried to play a4, okay.
So what's the point of a4? So you could take on c4 with your d2 knight and attack the queen. The bishop's protected. Bishop b4 says, I'm pinning your knight. I can castle kingside next. White castles, renewing the threat of knight d2 takes c4. That's why Alexandra took on d2. And there's so many different possibilities here, Anna. You can take on d2 right away. You can take on c4. You can bishop takes c6 check. Now again, you take on c6 with a knight, with the bishop. How would you continue?
With the bishop and take on c4. Yes.
Dark squares. I mean, just completely under White's control here. And the light square is under black's control. It just feels like white is a tempo ahead. The queen on b6 is under attack. Rook f to c1 can be next. Knight can come to d6 to attack with bishop on f5 and close the c file. Sorry, the d file, pardon. And the c file is now open for white. And that's going to be a good thing.
It looks like white is pressing a little bit, but black is also quite okay at the moment. Just rook d8, rook c8, knight d5.
Bishop e4 now. Okay, rook c8. I thought bishop e4 to d5 made a lot of sense. But there's some bishop g5 stuff, Anna, right? That actually is kind of annoying here, where you pin the knight and threaten to take it and expose black's king.
I thought you would think about g4 again. I was already like thinking what to answer, what to do for g4.
Anna, I try to suggest very good moves that have strategic value. G4, what kind of move is that, Anna? How could you suggest that?
I don't know.
I've poisoned her mind, everybody. I'm sorry, Anna. I know you're going to be playing a game soon, and you're going to be like, "Oh, what about G4 here?" And you're like, "Wait, what am I thinking? That's a terrible move." So let's see. Queen b6 puts pressure on d4 right away, and rook c4 played. I still want to reroute this bishop. Bishop e4 to d5 makes a lot of sense to me. What do you think about that move? And knight e4 is played instead.
Maybe Alexandra wants knight e4 and knight d6.
Okay, but where's the knight going next? She can play f6?
Now we can speak about bishop e4 again, but Alexandra preferred knight e4.
Interesting.
Rook c5, knight e4.
Rook c1 playing for more. And f6 is a big question here.
A bishop e4 is also a question here.
So she starts with f6, then bishop e4, and then knight f5. Like, it feels like black can make some progress here. White does have the a and b pawns versus just an a pawn for black, though the c6 pawn, of course, take on d3 and play bishop d3, and then there's rook c5, so you don't lose the pawn. Very important. So she plays bishop e4 and puts the bishop on d5 instead.
All right, so speaking about this position, and we have opposite colored bishop, but it's not an endgame, so it's very important whose king is safer and whose king is weaker. Looking at the kings, I prefer white's king, even after f3.
I do as well. And I also am looking at b5, and if c takes b5, play rook c7. Like, there's some scary threats here for white to break through. That's a good move.
So Alexandra heard you. She played a6, not to allow that, but queen c3.
b5's coming.
b5 is coming, yes.
Rook 8's a very good move, though. You need counterplay. You can't just sit and do nothing. And
7. Just some prophylaxis against b5.
Yeah, queen f7 does look good. You don't really have too many moves as black. It's a weird position. You're kind of stuck.
King h8.
Oh, wow. That is unexpected. G5?
Oh, God. G5? I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that.
So you mentioned G4 earlier. You never told me about G5. And as much as I like to play freely, G5 was not a move that I was recommending.
H5. What about rook c6 sacrifice? I mean, in general, it looks good.
Yeah, the d4 pawn, I guess, is a potential problem, which is why she went this route. And I guess it doesn't really look that bad for black unless you can get all your pieces in the seventh rank. But now g4 is a big threat. Okay, so rook to b2 was played. And g4 doesn't work.
King f2, g takes f3. Oh, rook c7.
Watch out for rook a2 check. Okay, queen g6 coming with a tempo on the rook, and then queen h7, same idea. Queen come to f5. Whose king
That's
is worse?
That's a bit crazy.
So queen takes c2 or queen is t7 would be an immediate draw, but queen f5, you're playing for more. She has queen h1, all right.
H1 or queen d3, yes.
Depending on what white does, there may be some kind of rook a1, probably rook c8 check, and you get mated too quickly, so don't do that.
Queen f4. What to do now? Because now the pawn on f6 is under the attack.
King F. No, Queen H. What?
Queen
Oh, the rook's under
H7.
attack. Okay, she
The
might
rook's-
just try to trade queens and like be like, I need to make a draw now. It's too risky.
Maybe Queen F5 now?
Queen F5 is a great move. Or Queen D3 also, but not Queen C3. And then Queen F5. If she's trying to win, okay, she that was a reasonable decision. I really like that choice by Alexandra. She's down 5 seconds. Both kings are weak. Now she can never lose this position, and she can actually keep playing if she wants to. 1 minute remaining. Do you think that Alexandra wants another 3-minute game, or she prefer to just go right to the bullet?
I think she doesn't know that it's the last game, or I mean, she can't calculate that. The players, when they are playing the games, they don't know how much time is left. So I just think she's playing because she thinks her position is a little bit better, but they already stopped playing. And we have one more game. Yes, we are in time to have one more game.
Last game of the 3+1, and we've seen Anna Ushenina. She has been winning this 3+1. She's up 6-3, if I'm not mistaken, in this time control. She was down 5.5, 3.5. She has surged into the lead, and we are back to E4, and we're back to a Petrov.
Another Petrov, another game in the Petrov.
Too
and
solid.
the new line, fifth small knight c3. So how many new lines Alexander tried today? Amazing.
She's been adventurous. She's been willing to mix it up. And this position, once again, control over the E file is important. It's the only open file. Black is a little more cramped. She plays B6, so she could play bishop B7, but bishop B5 played so quickly there by Alexandra. And is that big a deal, though? Well, D5, knight to D4 trying to come, knight to C6. I like White's position.
I also like what Alexander is doing. A6 was correct. Otherwise, there was a big problem with knight d4. And bishop c6 is also a good move. If bishop c6, d takes c6, this pawn on c6 is a bit annoying because it takes too much space from black.
It does. And it also clears the d5 square for the white knight to get there eventually. Knight to d4 played first, protects c6 preemptively, allows queen f3, then maybe knight f5. Honestly, this position looks really easy to play for white, although h6 is a good starting move to try to kick the bishop. g5, no, right? No way. No way, g5.
g5?
Hey, we were talking about g4 and g5 last game. We might as well include in this one. g5 would be very bad, though, because you permanently give up the f5 square.
I don't think g5 will be played now.
But I don't know what move to play, because bishop f8, just rook takes e8. So I'll show that. Rook e8, you have to take with the queen, then bishop takes f6, and you have to take with the pawn.
g5. Yes. Yes,
you
we got
g5?
it. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Anna, what did I tell you? See, now you've made me doubt myself, but I knew g5 was going to be played. It just looks really bad, though. I'm going to be honest. It looks really bad, but you have made me doubt myself.
But sometimes you don't have good options, so you have to take at least some option. And knight f5, yes, this knight in f5, it's so strong.
Oh gosh, I can't believe that g5 happened. And
well, but rook e6, queen f8 is coming. Then another rook to e8. Maybe it's not so bad.
It looks pretty bad, but maybe it's not so bad as
maybe
you're
it's
saying.
not so bad. What about b4? No, it's not trapping the knight because at least we can take on e1 and go knight e6.
Wait, I like that though. I like b4 a lot. If you have to play rook takes e1, then I'm very happy about that.
Why did you give this knight? There was such a good knight on f5. Did she calculate something? Knight e6 and now? h4, but h4 it's not a mate.
No, the knight on f5 was really strong there. And honestly, I want to put my next knight there. I want to play knight d1 to e3 to f5, but it takes some time. That was a strange decision by Alexandra. She still has aggressive intentions. She's still playing
Queen h8. Queen h7 and rook e8. It's a very nice regrouping, in fact. Queen h7. Amazing. I mean, queen h8, it was such a strong move.
Oh my gosh. Queen h8?
Queen h8. Queen h8.
Oh my gosh. I'm in shock right now by that move.
But in a good sense, because it was a good move, I think.
What was that?
That was a move.
I'm like looking over it, like Are my eyes correct here? Yeah, they are. Queen h8 to h7. Oh my what a concept. So, okay, let's get back to the game here. C4 played to stop d5, to make b5, and now a5 was smart. You're giving yourself the c5 square for your knight. And queen d5. I like that move, though, by Alexandra. Okay, I actually really like this move, queen d5. And what now, though?
Queen f6.
How to make progress here?
This bishop on g3, it's a bit passive.
So
White may think about sacrificing it on d6 some time, but not now, because they will not advance the c6 pawn after that. But if the knight wasn't on e6, you have to calculate the sacrifice, because bishop d6 may be dangerous.
oh my gosh, queen h8. I'm just still not over that, honestly.
You're still there, yes, queen h8. I think it's the most amazing move from a positional point of view.
It just, yeah. Okay, so I'll get my head back into this game. I'm looking at f4 ideas for white as well. And you played b5. The big downside of that is you've given the c5 square to this knight on e6. The knight hasn't moved there yet, but at some moment soon it probably will. Black can play rook to e8, trade off the rooks. And the good news for white is that all of black's pawns are in dark squares. So there's potential to attack them and things like that. The bad news is that with a dark square bishop, you can't protect any of your pawns on the light square. So if black can pile up some pressure, that's going to be an issue. White is also up 15 seconds on this. So whose position would you prefer here?
Maybe black's, because playing with the knight it's easier to play with the knight. Knight c5, just jump somewhere.
Knight c5, maybe there's no rook g4, then you have knight e4. So should knight g7. Okay, and maybe rook. She trades. She definitely did not want to trade. And is there c5 ideas for white? Can I play c5? She does it. You can't take with the d pawn.
b6.
Oh my gosh!
Or queen a5.
Yeah, queen a5 and the c6. But then
g takes h4 was a very strong move.
So you have to watch out for g takes h4 though, because your bishop on g3 is trapped. And if h takes g5, there's queen takes g5, and the queen h5, queen d1 is like always a drawing mechanism, that is.
Mm-hmm.
So queen a5 play. She didn't take on h4. She probably was worried about queen takes c7, giving up the bishop. This is a crazy game here. And king e7 only moves.
Okay.
G takes h4.
Can she take now?
Yeah, then queen d7, yeah, bishop takes d6.
Oh, queen d7, king f8, bishop d6. I told you about bishop d6.
You did.
Finally, queen e7. Where to go?
I can't take and go b6, can I? No. So I'll play queen e5, threatening queen h8 checkmate. Play queen e5. Okay, she gives a check
queen
first.
b8 and b6.
Queen e5.
Oh, what to do after b6?
I ask you what I should have done instead. I don't know.
Okay, b7, c3. No, c3, queen e5.
Queen e5.
Queen e5, f6.
And then queen takes c3 is probably good, but they're...
Queen c...
Whoa, what? No, queen takes
e5?
c6. No, queen e5 loses.
Okay, and c7 and white is first.
Oh my gosh. What a turn of events there. Okay, we are about to take a break. But before we take a break, we have to analyze what in the world just happened in this game. I am going to start all the way back on move 23. You know where I'm going. Queen h8 was brilliant to go queen h7 and to regroup. That was really an awesome move. But let's go to this endgame here, because white sacrificed her bishop on d6. She had to, but she planned this. Takes, queen takes. The passed pawns are great. White went wrong, I think, with playing queen takes e6 here, because after b8 equals queen, black can simply take on c6, and you have a passed pawn that white is going to struggle to deal with. In fact, black is much better here, if not winning. It's a queen e5 check. Says, let's trade queens because I'm going to promote. The problem is after the queen trade, you promote and move too slow. White queens first and wins the game.
So many things happened in this game. I had a question if instead of queen c6, c2 was possible. I don't know, just a few moves before.
C2, yeah, definitely.
If queen b7, we go king g6. If queen b2, we take on c6.
Or queen e5 check there. Oh my gosh. You got it. C2 first was winning.
Well.
You know what that means? It means we need to take a break. There was fireworks in that game. There was g5. There was queen h8. There was a crazy queen and pawn rush at the end. we will take our final break before we get to the bullet section of this FIDE Chess.com Women's Speeches Championship. You will not want to miss this finish.
Definitely not. See you soon.
And we just want to remind everybody about the format as we head into the bullet. We are in, you look at the second point there, 30 minutes of 1+1. And if there's a game in progress when the match clock is over with, that game still will count. It will conclude, and that'll be it. And as you see, $6,500 to the winner. Not such a bad prize fund, 3,500 to the runner-up on a big prize at stake here.
Yes, I can't wait for the games to start because we are witnessing a very exciting and very intense match. The score is 9.5 to 9.5. The players I see are ready to start. This break, I believe, was important for both of the players. They had time to think what they will do in the bullet section and bullet section. I think this is what you are ready to see. Are you ready for bullets, Robert?
I'm certainly ready. I wonder if the chat is ready because it's a tied match, 9.5, 9.5. And I thought you were going to say, Anna, that the break was needed by us. And that's probably true as well. And we have liftoff. We have bullet chess. We have Anna Ushenina with the white pieces taking on Alexander Kosteniuk. We're back to this B6 variation. What do you think about this decision?
So we see some similar line, yeah, with bishop f6 winners and g5 again.
Yes.
So it's the match about g5 and g4, a really thematical one.
I'm glad that we were able to see this today, and it may not be the grub, but I'm still happy that it's happening. G4 played. Black has gained important space. Queen f4, that's an obscure move. It protects the pawn on g4, but now white plays g3. White can play f3 or f4 to chase this queen, open up the position. I mean, look how much space white has here.
And look how many moves the black queen is making. I mean, amazing.
Not enough. The fianchetto queen here, it gives black some attacking chances. The king went to the queen side, and the queen went to the king side. There may be h5, h4, but white's knights in f3 and g2 are trying to protect that king preemptively.
King b8 instead, now a4, a5. Yes.
Yes. And what does black do? f5 maybe? You have to try something aggressive. She plays f5. I think that's a good decision. You need to open up the board here. Bishop d6. Or take on f5 first. I'm not sure. But either way, bishop d6.
a5. Yes, now knight a5 is not possible because of rook takes a5, b takes a5, queen b5 mate.
So bishop d6 played. And now take with the c pawn. Keep the a file closed for as long as possible. And h5, f4, h4, all these type of moves are possible here. The pawn structure is bad for black, but I love the bishop pair in a bullet game.
The pawn structure is bad, but who cares? Yes, now some sacrifice on g3 in there. Maybe rook g8 first, trying rook f8. Rook f8, trying to push f4.
And I'm looking at this bishop on 8 on and this long diagonal. At some point, there may be some kind of knight takes d4 or something like that.
Knight h4 was a good move, in my opinion, blocking the h4 move. Bishop e7.
Knight g6 wins the exchange.
Knight g6 wins the exchange, but nobody cares.
I cared, Anna. I cared.
Or bishop e7. Will this be the repetition this way? Or Anna is trying, or Anna saw that she missed knight g6 and now she wants to make it queen g5. Okay, better move than bishop e7.
She saw it for sure. That's why she went back. And 17 seconds. So rook to g8. Rook g8 threatened both knight on f4 and on h4. So you had to be careful there. Rook e8 instead. Rook g8 now. You have to move. Why f8? What? I don't like that. Okay. Ooh, I like knight a5 though. The bishop on a8 finally sees the light of day. And
rook f2?
f5.
No. Rook f2?
Yes, rook f2, rook e3.
Knight.
Knight
no.
g2, bishop takes g2, loses a piece. I was thinking the same thing.
And f5, bishop f4 also loses a piece.
Yes. So rook f3 is giving bishop takes f4. What's the plan here? Knight to d2. Some tricks, but it's too confusing. Take on b2 now. You take on b2. You take on c3. She pre-moved knight takes b2, which was bad in case of knight takes f5. Just for the record. Sometimes pre-moving is not a good thing, but black is ahead on the clock. King takes e7, free piece. Oh, missed it. She missed the free piece. She's like moving too quickly. And d6.
Oh
my gosh. Rook c1 check.
Check.
I'm so nervous for both players.
Check again.
Rook takes e7. Take on d7.
No.
Oh, what?
Rook c8, very good move.
Oh, it's a great move. It wins. It was like it. I don't think she like really intended for it to win the way it did. But king takes c6. The game continues everywhere.
King e1, rook d1.
Queen
Take
takes
it.
d1.
Take this rook. Take this rook, please. Yes.
Oh my gosh, what a weird game. Don't give up your G pawn, because if you lose your knight and your G pawn, it would be a draw. No, game over.
Okay, I mean, it's only the first game and it's so exciting one. Can you imagine what will follow?
Oh my gosh, I'm like stretching my back a little bit, cracking my neck. I'm ready for this, Anna. You asked me if I was ready. I asked the chat if they were ready. I don't think anyone was quite ready for that game.
Chat, are you ready? Are you ready for bullet? It's a lot of fun.
We still have 25 minutes in the match. It is a one-game lead for Anna Ushenina here. And now this bishop is traded on d3. We've seen this variation several times. White can just castle kingside. Here, b6 is a little bit loose because the knight on c6 can be pinned. And you just have to be careful before playing like b6. That's why she castled first. And bishop b2. That way she can play b4. And a5 says, nope, not so fast. You're not playing b4. So Anna, out of the opening, whose position do you like here?
C takes b6, c takes b6, rook c1. Looks like more pleasant for white because white can go later on with knight b5. Maybe now. Knight
yes,
b5,
I like that.
Or rook e1, knight e5.
Yeah, you're choosing between which four knight h4, knight f5. So a lot of fives. We heard b5, e5, and now f5. Don't play g5. We've talked about this many times today. G5 is way too risky. It doesn't make sense here. And queen d7. Maybe you can queen f5 in some lines to trade off queens. Knight f5 was better. Watch out for bishop h6 or knight h6, queen g3 type ideas. And queen f3. Knight takes h6 is a threat. The knight on f6 is now hanging.
So maybe h5 and g6.
H5 was bishop g5 though.
Knight h7. And then g6.
Oh, you know your teammate there, so she plays h5 and maybe knight h7.
Maybe knight h7.
Ooh, knight e4. Take that thing.
Take.
Rook takes.
E4.
This is pretty dangerous.
Knight h6.
Oh, knight h6 was so strong here. Just securing the dark squares. Oh, queen f6.
She gave this.
Queen f6?
Knight f5.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, but it's so. This is the thing you don't really like to do, to give this bishop. Now bishop e5 is coming. Queen c6.
So take and rook e8. Oh, it doesn't quite work.
Is there any mate?
Not yet, but she has the dark squares permanently under. Oh, I like this. She put a pawn on b6, cemented it on a dark square, which means that she can play bishop b8, bishop a7, and go right after this pawn. She has pretty decent. Ooh, knight e7 to d5 is smart. Rook b5 now. All right, she brings her bishop back first. Rook b5.
Okay.
Should not be winning.
Rook c2 or rook c4?
Should just be a draw with proper play now.
Wow.
Rook and c6. Knights prefer to have pawns on the same side of the board. I was looking at b6 pawn, thinking there could be an issue there. That's why those pawns traded off. Now the knight is very happy here.
They're repeating the moves. Okay.
And at some point, Anna, the players need to think about how much time to waste. I know they were making a repetition. That was the right thing to do. But I look at the match clock just under 23 minutes, and Anna Ushenina has a 1-point lead. There may be a moment in the next bunch of games where she wants to waste a little more time.
True. And the same line.
Oh,
I've seen it a couple of times. D takes c4. So what will Anna play now? Take on c6, a4 or queen a4. She has tried 3 different options and she opted for bishop takes c6 now and knight c4. I like it the most.
I mean, I like it, but the reason I don't like it so much is because I'm sort of tired of it, really. That's the main reason. Yeah, it's a slight advantage for white. The pawn on c6, the pawn a7 are split. So I think it's actually a good opening. Queen b5 is a nice move. If you take on b5, only trade queens when it favors you. And now if you trade queens, it makes the pawn structure a little bit safer on the queen side. And this knight's coming into d5. I think that black's okay here.
But the rook is coming to c5, f3, and g4. Don't forget. G4 or g5, very important moves in every game.
Now you're speaking my language, but g4, I just move bishop back to g6. I'll play f6 now. She plays h5 first,
H5.
okay.
Just not to allow g4.
f6, please. There it is.
Knight c6.
And rook e8. I thought rook f7 was better, but okay. And actually, knight f4 was a good move for black, going to d3. She's playing on the queen side here. Rook c5 played, and just looks pleasant for white now.
Just rook c1. Yes. A4. No, don't trade it. A4, and now how to defend the pawn on a5?
Well,
I didn't know how to. She went 94 instead. So how to create some counterplay? Because the knight on c6 is blocking the rooks. The rook can't go to b8 because of this knight on c6. So what to do? Rook a6 or no? She decided to trade 97.
Okay, if the knight takes an a5. Oh, the knight took an e7. Wasn't expecting that. H5 was saying. Totally forgot about that pawn. It's been irrelevant. It hasn't been doing anything, but it was just stolen. And
Rook
now
c4 and rook a4.
But e5, great move by Alexandra.
E5 was a great move, yes. Just trade the pawns, rook d3, rook a3. Serious counterplay.
So 2 extra pawns for white, but the king is a little bit out in the open. Oh, make that 1 extra pawn. And whose king is worse? Black's king is suddenly worse.
King g4, maybe.
How about king g5?
Oh, king g5. Wow, king g5 and king g6. But king g6 there was rook f6. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just going for the checkmate. Just, it may not work out, but
like always.
And this position, what black wants to do is win the e pawn for the a pawn, because the 2-on-1 in the rook game is a theoretical draw. However, it's not easy to accomplish that. And look at the clock situation. And
rook
white needs to be
a5,
careful
a3.
too. A2?
G4, a2, king g5.
Oh,
rook
here's
a6
g5 check.
And king g5.
Here comes the king to e5.
She wants to burn the king to e5. Yeah, king e5.
G6 check. G6 check. It's winning.
G6 first, yeah.
And then rook a7, and then take on a2. Oh my gosh, what a precise move order there by Anna.
This was a great technique.
Yeah, you forced the king away, so the king no longer had opposition. Now rook e8 checkmate is forced, and nothing that you could do except for resign. It is a 2-game lead for Anna. Plenty of time left, 19 and a half minutes. Alexandra has time here, but she needs to start winning.
Another Petrov on the board. What will happen now? Knight at c3. Okay.
And knight c6.
I don't know.
These moves I don't quite understand.
I don't know about knight c6.
And she takes her castle. So black is hoping for the bishop pair to be an advantage. White is saying, I'm first to develop. I'm going to go b3. And that way, if you ever go rook b8, the semi-open file attacks nothing. I can play bishop b2 if I'd like. I can play c4 now, knight to g3. All these moves seem to be quite natural for white with the better pawn structure.
I'm a bit sad with knight g3 and bishop g6 because now there is no g4 and g5.
Yes, there is no g4, g5, but there is simple development and a very solid position for white. Do you play b4? No, she plays knight h4 going after the bishop instead.
If she plays b4, then maybe a3, and there are still some problems with the pawns on a2 and b4. Queen a1. I think Alexandra was influenced by Anna's queen h8, so now she tried queen a1.
She learned from her opponent here, and white is still better. You have control over. Watch out for rook a8 trapping the queen. b4 play.
Oh yes. Okay, b4 good.
And d5 I would play at some point for black.
Maybe b5.
b5 for white I would also consider, yes. And maybe bishop g5 here. This knight on f6 is really bothering me. Okay, I don't like playing b5 and then thinking for a little bit afterwards. That generally worries me. And I don't like that black has this d5 square for her knight. That's such
the
a
knight is coming to
square.
d4.
And
knight
now
d5?
Yeah, knight d5, rook to b8, f6, or f5 even. Yeah, this is... f5 is actually probably just a good move for black there.
Yeah, cutting the knight, because now the knight can go to e4, and Alexander did.
Mm-hmm. Rook b7. I think if I'm Alexandra, I'd make a quick draw, because you really shouldn't win this game ever, and you don't want to waste too much time. So like rook b7, rook b8 is probably what I would have done to repeat the moves. Like, what does rook c8 accomplish?
Just a move. I mean, you have 20 seconds. You have to make some move.
Well, I think just rook. That's why I was saying rook to b7, rook to b8. I thought it was an easy way to try to force a repetition. But perhaps I'm missing some resources from black. And
will Anna repeat the moves? No, Alexander will go on.
f5?
Or g5?
Yeah, both are tempting.
f5 is the threat now. Be careful. f5 and f4.
She could have played f5 there.
And I did too.
f5?
f5?
g3 or something.
And g5 then. f5 now, still.
Yeah, f5 scares me. So she plays g4, and... Okay, the king's coming to e4. Now black has to be a little bit careful.
King e6, or knight c3, yeah, knight and knight d5. It seems like Anna is very satisfied with the draw. Just don't blunder the rook. Rook c3.
She's already blundered a rook today. We saw that happen. Now rook c3, king e4.
King e6.
Oh, you're so sneaky.
Yeah.
So knight back to d2, and if rook c3, there's knight e4. I like white's chances here. I think white is slightly better because of so g6 played. That's a good move, actually. Maybe white's not better anymore.
Just rook
f5.
c3.
I'm looking at f5.
We are both not guessing the moves.
f5. Play for a win, even though you don't need to win because you're up 2 points in the match. Oh gosh, 15 minutes and 40 seconds remaining. Plenty of time for Alexandra. We just said that last time, though. There was plenty of time. There still is. But the more long games you draw, the less time you have to mount the comeback.
Is it the same line again? Again g5 or what? Okay, g5. But Alexandra didn't have a good position the previous time, so she decided to repeat it. Why?
She's playing for a win, and she's playing this adventurous line here with g5. She has not played g4. She committed to that move too early last time she played this. Oh, well, I take that back. I don't know. Just I wasn't expecting the g4 game. Knight on g1, though. That's not a good knight.
So that's why Anna wants to activate it. But Alexandra keeps her pawn on g4, so e5. Long castle, well. A long castle for black?
Yeah, castling queen said you have to play for black, otherwise your king gets stuck in the center. She castles. Bishop a6 is a move, and it's been played. f5, typical. And so who's better here? The knight on g1 is stuck, but white has control of the h file. The bishop
I like queen d3 and rook f1, maybe at knight e2.
So you're completing your development this way. She takes on e4. It's a big decision. And queen f5. That way you can play d5 if your opponent blunders. So queen f5 now, there's knight to g3.
Knight g3, yes.
And if queen g6, there's knight c5 checks. So she went queen back to f4.
Cool. Knight h5 also very nice. Knight g3, will she repeat it? I think she will try to repeat it.
And I think that Alexandra says, nope, let me swing my queen over to a5 here. And there's no attack for black. Oh, rook h5. d5 played so quickly, shutting off the rook. And now e5. I like it, actually. If you're playing for a win, this is the way to do it.
All right. Queen a4. Queen was almost trapped, but okay, not almost. There was still a place on a6. D takes e5 or knight f5.
So rook h6 here, I'd probably think about. Rook h7 played. c7 is not under attack, so I'm not worried about that. Queen c4, I would consider. I don't know if it's actually good. She plays it, and the d4 pawn is in trouble. So that's why if you take on c4, I take with the pawn. I'm going to win your d4 pawn, and this is happening. I don't like this for...
Oh, no, knight d2 you can still... Oh, d takes e5 in between?
Wait. Bishop takes e5? Where's that knight going from b3?
c1?
Rook d2. Rook d2. Here comes the activity.
No, you can't go rook d2.
Okay, take on f1.
Take.
And I didn't like that at all.
Bring the knight back. Knight e2, knight e3.
Yeah, that's one of those moves that you just play it too quickly, and now white is getting out of it. You know, she was in big trouble before. She still doesn't have too much time, but white's position was looking bad in my eyes. Now it's looking totally fine. And what's the idea?
Rook f5.
Knight d3, 91 check to take g2.
Oh, 91 is coming. Oh, wow.
91 take g2, definitely with 93 coming. Oh gosh, that knight d2 move is really not good. But knight takes c4, she can barely play that. She's trying to go b5 in. The knight's trapped down here, so knight e3, and now white's up a pawn, and a lot of extra time for black though.
e4? No.
So a5,
White is trying
a4.
to play for a win now.
Yeah, who's
a3?
playing for the win?
No, don't allow this a3. Okay.
Rook a8 coming.
Knight to f5.
Mm-hmm.
King e4.
Yeah, bishop h8 probably. Sad move, but...
Oh, it's too far.
Rook... Oh, bishop takes c3. Uh-oh. That's an important pawn. Here comes bishop d2. Was a winning of the other pawn. She's instead pushing her b pawn down. Rook a8 coming. Rook a8 now. Then knight d5. And then rook takes 8.
Rook a2, knight b4.
Oh my gosh, knight b4 barely in time. Rook a3. King e2. Yeah, c5. Like it's going to be a draw probably, you're right. But it's scary
knight
clock.
D3,
That's what I'm worried about. We've seen some blunders in time trouble here. Okay, rook e8, rook f8, rook f3.
Knight c5.
King c6, and if knight e4, king d5. Oh, knight takes d6 just in time.
Knight d6 was g5. Now it's easy. Rook a8. Check, check.
Yeah, this is now.
This is a draw, yes.
Don't play d2 though, then you lose. Now she did this in the right move
So
order.
much stress.
And we still have 11 minutes, but Alexandra's running out of time. And if you're Anna, right, do you play this on for the next 12 seconds? Like throw a couple checks in, move your king.
She's trying.
Just waste some precious seconds, And all right, so we have another Petrov. Oh my gosh, I'm tired of this Petrov. Are you tired of it too, or is it just me?
Just me? Anna is winning, so her strategy seems to be okay. So why not to repeat?
Just for gosh,
what
bishop f5.
The c2 pawn is hanging. Can we defend? Okay, we don't really want to play bishop d3.
Bishop b5, bishop a4, only decision that was possible, I guess.
Much better.
And somehow it's not the worst thing I've ever seen for white, but it was not good to blunder that. She clearly was nervous and was like, okay, breathe. I have a move here. Knight d4, take it and play c4. Yeah, somehow this isn't so bad.
Where to move the knight now? d5 is coming, as we have seen in the previous games. d5, I believe, yes. But after c5, queen d7. Maybe now Anna doesn't need b6. She can just play something without b6.
And b5 now for white. You have to play something like that. I mean, you need to win the game. She'll play b5 next, I guess. How about b5 for black?
How about queen d7? Will you still play b5? But queen d7, 95. Yeah. Okay.
So b5 for sure now, or not?
Nothing is for sure. Maybe that b5 now. Queen a8.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Anna is the master of queen a8, queen h8 moves.
Okay, rook b2. So she's going to play b5. The one thing that white has to be careful about is sometimes you play b5, there are knight takes c5 tactics. Not here, though. So h3 was a good move, making sure that the king has luft. The king can go to h2, now b5. Finally, at long last, it happens. White has to be better here, slightly. And
do you want to play b6 on the next move, or do you want to take on c6?
I'm going to leave it. Oh, she took it. I was going to leave it for at least the time being. Play knight to d2, eventually try to go after this pawn on c6. Maybe knight e1 to d3, but that doesn't look so good either. So rook b1, queen...
Bishop f4 now.
Yeah, bishop f4 to go bishop e5 even. That looks pretty good. I just feel like black's weakness on c6 is very obvious, and white's potential weakness on, say, like d4 square isn't so easy to spot.
So I really like bishop d8 and bishop c7. This maneuver and covering the b6 square, so the rook will never come there, not attacking the c6 pawn, rook b7.
How is white ever going to win this game? Just take on b1.
Trade the rooks. And then h5. I like h5. I like h5 and then g6.
How
place
can white do
all the pawns
here?
On the light squares.
Yeah, and how can white do a single thing? Oh, don't
take
on c6.
What a trap! I mean, queen c8, what a sneaky move. Oh, God.
Yeah, that's too sneaky,
h5.
Don't play queen c8 now, because then I take on c6.
But play h5 with white now. Just fix this pawn structure.
How about queen a5, queen b6? Here it comes. Wait, this is actually getting dangerous. Bishop f4 to c7 is a threat in some universe. Maybe not this universe.
Queen e4.
Yeah, and so much time is being wasted. Just try to make a repetition. If you're Alexandra, I mean, you just need to start winning games, obviously, but this game is not winning. She makes a draw. That was very smart. I
thought about trying to play with black and to go something like queen e6. Well, obviously the position is equal, but it's a good position for black, and it's difficult to lose, and you can make many moves and keep the time.
And we have g6, a fianchetto here from Alexandra, and she's now already up 5 seconds out of the opening. That's good. Ooh, okay. Dynamic play here that you see out of the Grunfeld with c5 striking the center. And because Anna's been playing the London, I don't think she wanted these aggressive positions with queen a5,
I think she would,
knight e4, all this stuff.
Yeah, she would prefer to have a more calm one. But theoretically speaking, I think Alexandra mixed something in the opening. And I don't know about bishop. That's very creative. Bishop e6 and bishop c8.
Yeah, I don't think that was intentional. I think that was a mistake that she realized, okay, I need to move that bishop away. Now knight e4 was a move to threaten e5. So that actually is a tactical opportunity here. All these trades should be good for white. And Alexandra's hoping that her extra 10 seconds can come in handy. Queen a5. So bishop e6 once again. These bishop e6 moves happen when I'm least expecting them.
Queen a4, good move, attacking both of the pawns.
Yes. Knight d5, a
d5.
good move in response. Hitting the f4 bishop, the knight on c3, and at least putting some cause for concern in white's position. Whoa, whose pawns are worse?
It seems like black is attacking first.
You are indeed. Okay,
I like black's position more because the pawn on c3 is a weakness while the pawn on c4 is well protected.
You're absolutely right here. Black somehow has a better position, and rook to d2. Why not? Just bring that rook into the game and then bring the next rook over to d8. Much more space for black. You're first of the action, the pawn c3 compared to the pawn c4. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, take on c3. It's a free pawn. Anna, it's getting...
So the show goes on.
The show must go on, as they say at the Moulin Rouge. And right now, this is... I don't even know which one, bishop f6 or rook to d8 or even queen a5, trying to offer the queen trade. She plays bishop f6. That's the safest of the moves.
White needs a loft, just h3 or h4. Just play something. Okay.
Bishop d7.
Bishop d7. Bishop d7.
Oh my! Queen d7 is also good. Bishop d7 one material. 5 seconds for white. Here comes the c pawn. We talked about it a long time ago. And what move now? Queen d1. But what next? Rook h5, probably making space for the king. So h4. Where's the bishop going?
c7.
Okay, f2's under attack. How do you protect that?
She lost some time.
Oh my gosh, what a game by Alexandra.
It didn't start well, but it ended well for Alexandra.
Oh my gosh, we have a match, everybody. It is 1 point lead for Anna Ushenina. And right now, Alexandra has the white pieces. It's another Petrov. And we have some of the main lines rather than the lines we've been seeing in these other games. Knight to d7 played so that knight can trade off. And we've seen this line earlier. I liked white's position in it. And I think that for a bullet game, it seems easier to play for white because of the attacking possibilities.
Yeah, perhaps. But for black, what did we see in the previous game? A bishop f5, queen c3, something like this, yes?
Well, the pawn was already on c6, and somehow there was a queen b6 check. So the move order has changed, and this looks good for white now. If you have to play b6, rook d1 now.
c6, c4.
Oh, okay. Just go
bishop
right
e6.
after the center. And then knight c3.
Yeah, the knight c3 is coming. Oh.
Wait, this looks really bad for black all of a sudden. Alexandra Kosteniuk, she gets that first victory. She's trying to get her second. A pawn sacrifice out of necessity for Anna here. And I think you just go bishop takes d4. Rook takes d4, also good. You've stolen a pawn. And
so it's just a free pawn, but be careful. Don't play knight c3 because of bishop c5. So rook d1, okay.
And now knight e2.
Knight e2.
Mm-hmm. She played h3. She didn't want bishop g4, so now knight e2 for sure. Oh gosh, this looks good for white here.
Knight e4, bishop e4. Though black has a good compensation for that.
Yeah,
not
bishop
enough.
Is very strong.
But the bishops are strong. c5, knight b5, queen b8, or queen b7. Queen b7 attacking the pawn.
Queen g3. Queen g3.
Queen g3.
Protect. Yep.
Good.
Knight d6. Knight c3.
Knight c3.
I like knight c3 because if the bishop goes to c6, there's f5. If the bishop goes to f5, there's knight d5. Your bishop has to make a big choice, or let's stay here, in which case I can capture you. So now
b5. Wow.
I like that move, actually. I really like that move. It's the trying to get aggressive in a position where you're down a pawn. And rook e1, good move. e6 is a threat, so queen f5 probably has to be played. And now e6 anyway.
Still e6. If f takes e6, rook e5, queen f7, rook h5.
Rook a1 too. Just go after. Oh my gosh, the e6 pawn is in big trouble. Rook d6, bishop takes c5. How do you protect e6? You can't. Bishop c5.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, what a performance by both of these players, where Anna really was dominant in the 3+1, came out hot in the bullet portion as well. F5! What a move!
Queen g6.
Oh my gosh, 2 pins on the E file and the G file. We see the queen trade offered here. And now rook takes b5. How many pawns is white up? 2 pawns? Okay, she was rook g5 instead. Rook e4 now.
It can be 3 soon.
Oh, this has been an amazing game.
b3, nice try.
So rook h4 and g7. And okay, rook h4 now for sure.
Yeah, rook g6. So 3 pawns. Okay, 3 pawns. It's a little bit too much.
Oh my gosh, we're about to have a tie with like a minute left in the match clock. So rook b4, and Alexandra has plenty of time. So watch out for some kind of rook takes b2 or some kind of funny business. Okay, it's not going to happen. She wins the game, and there's a minute and 10 seconds.
Oh my God, it's the last game, and it's the score is tied.
Oh my God, I feel like both players deserve to win this match, and I don't feel that way very often. Okay.
This is a really tough fight, and kudos to both of the players. I mean, they are really playing some amazing chess. It's really nice to watch it.
And Alexandra played a shaky opening in this game, but she is up 10 seconds. She talked about that strategy. Sometimes you just want to be ahead on the clock. E4 for white, more space here. Black has not developed anything. She'll maybe play G5?
Bishop but bishop h4 was really like inviting this g5, so I'd prefer to see bishop h4.
And Black just has less space here, and Black doesn't even have the bishop pair. So it's you have less space, but there isn't a clear sort of approach for white. Like Black's position looks bad. I've had positions like this many, many times online where your position is not good for right now, but white goes all in for some kind of attack and plays a move like f5, which actually looks pretty good. But then you play g5. And you're like, wait a second, where's my progress?
Yay!
I thought I was winning.
g5 was played in this game too.
Bishop g7, and actually Black's position looks worse than it is, I would say. c5. I mean, look at this.
d5, just give this pawn. D5,
give the b2 pawn? Oh!
e5?
Wait, d5 now. So you gave the pawn to play d5, and now knight f6 maybe? Okay. Knight e4, we trade. Black blockades. Queen d6.
You know what's the biggest difference? It's because we know that it's the last game, while the girls, they don't know about that. They just keep on playing.
They should have set a timer for themselves. I mean, I think this game's going to be a draw, and we're going to get to...
So...
Whoa. Do you play b4 for white at some point? b4. Play b4. I mean, just break open the position. I thought b4 was like a really good-looking move. And the threat is b4 at some point, but your queen was on f2, hitting everything on the diagonal.
All right.
The position's so closed. Oh my gosh. So...
will Black try to play something like bishop g5 and then e6 at some moment, or no?
She's going right after this f5 pawn, but now it's defended. h3, g3.
G3.
How do you make progress here for either side?
Okay, there is a possibility like to play king b8, queen c7, queen c8, but then d6 will come, and it's not a good idea.
All right, so rook b1 makes me think that b4 is somehow a threat, but it's not. At least not that I see. So they're just going to move back and forth. I think this game, it has drawish tendencies to it. And Anna, you know what that means? It means free chess on International Chess Day. Extra time.
It means we will have another 2 games, right? Or is the format different in the Superfinal?
It's a best of 4 bullet match. Okay, the game is still going on here. Wait, f5 fell. f5 did fall here. And rook takes f5. Queen d5 is coming. Oh my gosh. E takes d6, queen to d5.
Oh God.
And then what do you play here as Black? You don't have that much time.
Queen e6. Queen c6 and lots of checks.
King d7, king d8, king e7 coming. Okay, the king's running away.
b5? Was it a mouse slip?
Yeah, why didn't she take the pawn? That was a weird place to put the queen. She takes it. Now rook takes b3. And oh no, this is looking like it's going badly for white. You're down material. The king is not safe on e7. f5 though.
Bishop c6.
f4? What? G takes f4?
G takes f4. G3?
No, g3, just take it. Oh my gosh, what's happening here? Take an e5? h2 maybe? And then rook g1 check if you move the bishop? Rook g1? What's happening? Somebody help me out.
The queen is coming to g4, but is there a mate?
There's no mate. There's bishop g2.
There's bishop g2. Bishop g2.
Oh my gosh, what's happening? Queen h2 and then take on f4 with check? Or this?
I don't know.
We might just see a repetition. What in the world have we seen here?
No.
Bishop f1? What is rook h2? She meant rook h1. She blundered. Oh my gosh. She meant rook h1 check. And even that didn't work because the queen would have taken. But it looks like all is said and done.
What a crazy game and what a crazy match. Wow. I mean, I can't believe it.
Gosh, Anna Ushenina wins the match. This game, I don't believe will count. It doesn't. And with that, it is 14.5, 13.5. Anna.
Oh my God. I mean, thank you so much, girls, for such a match. You both deserve to win it. That's true.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, look at the players. They can't believe it's over.
I can't believe anything that just happened. We were talking about how they were repeating moves. It might be a draw. Then Black went for a win, but then White had his D6 check and the Queen came in. That was one of the most exciting finishes you could ask for. And I believe that we are going to go on a break now because we will bring on your teammate, your friend, your compatriot, Anna Ushenina, for an interview. So everybody, you will want to hear from the winner when we return. What a match this was.
Yeah.
And we are joined by the women's speed chess champion, Anna Ushenina. Huge congratulations on what was an absolutely thrilling match.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy about.
Were you, your username is Anki 007. Were you more the goddess of mischief, of knowledge, or were you more like Bond? How did you do what you did today?
No, no, I don't know. I just play and I just don't want to lose a lot. I try to have points. Okay, I mean, and I just try not to lose a piece in one move, because maybe after some time I got tired and. So I just say myself that, okay, just try not to lose piece in one move and it will be the best.
Okay, Anna, congrats for becoming the overall winner of Women's Speed Chess Champion. You performed extremely well in this tournament, and it was an absolutely amazing and crazy match at the same time, which we have just witnessed. So, how did you prepare for the match?
Okay, I just think what to play, and I wanted to play more solid because Alexandra is very, very good player, and I know she likes to attack and some position were possible to calculate and with attacking chances. So I just tried to avoid that and just to play more solid.
And we asked Alexandra this yesterday if she thought it would be an advantage to be having just played the fourth Grand Prix leg or having the rest and the preparation time. Did you feel like you were rusty at all? Because at the beginning in the 5 minute portion, that's when Alexandra went out to a lead.
Oh, well, I just try to play something different and to check how is that. But Alexander was good prepared there, and I just back to solid lines.
But how was it in terms of preparation? Did you try to prepare for both of possible opponents, like for Alexandra and for Valentina, or were you waiting for yesterday's match to finish and to know whom exactly you will play, and then prepare exactly for the opponent you would have to play to face today?
No, of course, I didn't prepare especially for Valentina or Alexandra. Well, I know because it's both very good players, and in Blitz they could also play something different and new. So I didn't spend so much time, but I just was happy that I qualified because after my last leg. I didn't think I have chances to qualify. I mean, I didn't think I have a lot of chances, so I just was happy that I will play in final. And I took maybe a bit rest, but I don't know. Maybe I should prepare more. I don't know.
Well, you did just earn yourself a pretty big prize today. So, do you have any special plans with your earnings, or you haven't even thought about that yet?
No, no. Of course, I didn't think. I need to realize that, and after we will see.
Okay, anyway, this match is over. You're the winner. So now you have time to celebrate with your friends, with your family. I hope you'll have a nice evening.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna, so much.
Thank you.
And that is your 2020 FIDE Chess.com Women's Speed Chess Champion, Anna Ushenina. She played so well throughout the Grand Prix stage and then in the Superfinal, where at the beginning of the match, it looked like Alexander Kosteniuk was in great form, was out to a lead. And then in the 3 minute, the middle time control, that's when Anna made her mark. And finally, in the bullet, the very last game, her back was against the wall. It looked like Alexandra was on the verge of taking that game, and Anna struck back.
Yeah, this G6 was like a blast. But I mean, not only this game, we have seen so many crazy, intense, and interesting games today that for me, it was a real pleasure to follow this match.
It really was a thriller. I feel like I just was a part of one of the most exciting movies that you could ask for, and I'm still jittery. Like I was getting nervous for the players. I was like screaming moves. Anna, we didn't know what to expect. And I guess what we've learned is to expect the unexpected, right?
Yeah, true, because some things we actually expected, but sometimes we were not guessing the moves, while the moves made by the players were very cool.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts about the Women's Speeches Championship as a whole? You were a player, you've been a commentator, and what are your kind of final thoughts of what the event was like?
Yes, my final thought is that, like Anna, I'll also need some time to realize that this tournament is over because, I mean, I am still like in this tournament mode and we just finished to commentate. Anyway, in any case, this is over. So I'd like to thank FIDE and Chess.com for hosting this event. I'd also like to thank the viewers, the moderators, all the commentators, the arbiters, and everyone who contributed and who made this event possible, because I believe it was very cool to watch it, and so many interesting games. I believe many of chess lovers really loved it.
Certainly. And well, it's been a very fun month. I have had the call from the very beginning. It's been an absolute pleasure to be joined by you, Anna, for the last 2 days, especially this amazing final that we had here. And I do want to thank everybody who's played a part in this event, whether it's FIDE or Chess.com, whether it's our viewers, the fans, the critics, our moderators, and everyone across the board, the staff members at Chess.com who behind the scenes were working so hard. And most of all, I want to thank the players who made this such a spectacle. They performed their absolute best. There was time trouble. There was wonderful sacrifices. There were big blunders, but everything made it an entertaining show. And I just want to tip my proverbial cap to the players, thank them so much for competing and for making the last month of my life something special. So on that note, I think it's time to draw the Women's Speeches Championship to a close. I want to wish everybody a wonderful International Chess Day. Keep playing chess, keep enjoying. There'll be much more action going online in the next period of time. So please enjoy, keep on learning, and have a really great day.
Yes, Robert, I mean, amazing words. And as we say, we don't say goodbye, but we say see you soon.
See you, everybody.